Hello everyone, Xeno What If here. Bring in Season 2 Part 17 of What If the Transformers Crash Landed in Code Geass. Link in the description of the fanfiction of this What If. Listen here YouTube. I do not own anything and this is not a scam. The new Prime. The medical bay was deathly silent, save for the sound of the monitors beeping as well as the heavy breathing of the barely living Optimus Prime, who had just dropped a bombshell that nobody had expected. Smokescreen, Perceptor, and especially Ratchet were completely stunned. Millie, Shirley, Rivals, Nina, and Cecile appeared to be just as shocked as everyone else. The amnesiac Sarah seemed more confused than anything, not completely knowing what was going on, but still rather surprised. Nunnally's eyes widened as she turned to look at her brother, wondering what he was thinking. Lelouch's eyes were widened like dinner plates, his mouth hanging open as his face turned pale. Did he really just hear Optimus say that? Was he really planning to pass the matrix of leadership, the collective wisdom of the original Primes, the last remaining piece of Primus Very Spark, onto him? Wait a moment, Cecile spoke up. Is that even possible? I don't fully understand how this matrix of leadership works, but can a non-Cybertronian even use it? She looked towards Ratchet. Yeah, I mean, the thing's gotta be bigger than Lelouch's whole body, right? Rivals added. Unless it gets plugged into his nightmare or something. I truly do not know. Ratchet confessed. Something like this has never happened before. The passing of the Matrix is one thing, but, to a human, there is no record in Cybertronian history that another type of life form ever wielded the Matrix. Perceptor said. And even if Lelouch can use it, how's he supposed to use the Forge? I mean, look at it. Smokescreen gestured to the Forge of Solus Prime that laid on the ground near them. Unless he ends up growing really big or it shrinks some, I don't see how it's physically possible. Alien magic, I guess. Millie said with a shrug. Unless it really does plug into his nightmare. But wouldn't that make it easier to steal? Nina wondered. Optimus has the Matrix inside him, right? And it's not like Lelouch is going to live in his nightmare forever. Guys. Shirley got all their attention. She gestured towards the young man and looked at all of them with a hard expression, silently telling them that they should think about how Lelouch thinks about this, as he is literally the center of this topic, not to mention his own emotional state. Something they all picked up on and looked towards him with sympathy. Lelouch didn't know what to say at first, clearly still trying to process it all. I'm not. He felt a gentle grip on his hand and turned towards Nunnally, who looked at him with an expression of concern and empathy, which seemed enough for him to at least get his thoughts somewhat in order and speak properly. I can't do it. I can't take it. He spoke to the gravely injured Prime. Optimus, I'm truly flattered, but even if the differentiating species argument doesn't apply, I'm not worthy of such a gift. I'm not Prime material. Lelouch, Optimus spoke weakly, looking towards him with understanding and concern. The choice is neither yours, nor mine, to make. When it is time, the matrix of leadership will present itself only to one who is truly worthy. As its current wielder, I can feel the will of the matrix itself, and it calls to you. We may be of different species, and you may not believe you are worthy, but I do. You have grown so much, you are indeed worthy of the title of Prime. Under any other circumstance, Lelouch would feel humbled and honored, but here, he only felt a cold emptiness forming in his heart. Well, if the Matrix has a will of its own. His fists clenched. Then I'm going to have to disappoint it. I reject the Matrix of leadership. While the humans present were certainly surprised to hear that, none were more shocked than Ratchet, Perceptor, and Smokescreen. Did they just hear that right? Did Lelouch openly say that he rejects the Matrix? Who in the name of Cybertron would ever reject something like that? Not if it means I have to give up you in exchange. Lelouch continued as his voice became much more emotional. Optimus, you're the closest thing to a father that I've ever had. I don't doubt the Matrix's power, but what makes you think I'll accept power in the place of someone I care about? I didn't give up on Suzaku, or Cornelia, or any of my other friends or family, and you encouraged me to do so. So what in the hell makes you think I am going to give you up just to wield some kind of godly power? Lelouch exclaimed as his face was filled to the brim with emotions, tears flowing down his eyes. Over my dead body. Shirley had covered her hand over her mouth as she felt her eyes water. Millie, Nina, and Cecile were also on the verge of crying as Rivals tried to harden his face to avoid showing any emotional weakness, as hard as it was, with Smokescreen attempting to do the same. Perceptor looked serious, while Ratchet had a somewhat conflicted expression himself, but he wholeheartedly agreed with Lelouch. Nunnally didn't even stop herself from crying, not just at seeing her brother like this, but the implication that she may very well lose her father figure as well. As for Optimus himself, he honestly never felt prouder to hear Lelouch say something like that. He was willing to reject power for the sake of someone he loved. That alone made him more worthy than he knows. Yet at the same time, Lelouch, I've always admired your drive, your unwillingness to give up, Optimus weakly said. But, even you know, that you cannot save everyone, and, you also have to learn, when to let go. The young man's teeth gritted with rage and sadness. And right before he could yell back, "Zero!" TAI contacted him urgently through the comms. "What?" Lelouch exclaimed, but quickly realized that he put his emotions into that response and tried to shove them down so he could speak more professionally, as best as he could anyway. "What is it, TAI? Damocles is almost within our airspace. ETA, 15 minutes. Get all civilians underground immediately, just as we planned. Ready the shields to maximum power and mobilize all our forces," Lelouch ordered before addressing everyone else. "Megatron will be here soon." "So, what do we do, then?" Cecile asked. "Anything you can to keep Optimus alive," Lelouch stated firmly. "Ratchet, if there are no other options, use the Forge. But, if possible, try to use only enough to put him in stable condition. I'm not going to sacrifice any chance of restoring your home. You don't have to tell me, and, thank you," Ratchet said sincerely. Of course, the medic would do anything and everything in his power to save his oldest friend, but he was also grateful that Lelouch was very considerate of Cybertron's future as well. The young man truly has grown since he first saw him. "Is there anything we can do?" Shirley asked. "Help Ratchet and Nina, that's all I can ask for now," Lelouch replied. "Sure, leave it to us, buddy," Rivals said with an assuring smile. "You just go and give Megatron some hellish payback from all of us," Millie stated with a determined grin. I don't know all that much about all of this, but I'll try and help in any way that I can." Sarah offered her services, trying to put on a determined expression herself. "Thank you, all of you," Lelouch nodded. "Smokescreen, let's go." "Right." The young Autobot transformed and opened his driver's seat for Lelouch to get in. But before he could, Nunnally quickly ran up to hug him from behind. "You come back, too. All right, Lelouch," she cried. "You come back to me. To all of us." She was already on the verge of losing a father, she couldn't bear to lose her big brother either. Lelouch gently put his hands on Nunnally's and unwrapped himself so that he could look with an assuring smile. "I'll be back." He wrapped his pink finger around hers. "I swear to you, Nunnally. I will return." Nunnally smiled as she stifled back her tears. "And you'll eat 1,000 needles if you don't." Lelouch tried to push back his laugh at that before he let go and entered Smokescreen's vehicle mode, who drove off immediately, leaving everyone else to get to work immediately at keeping Optimus alive as long as they could. Pretty much the entire forces that consisted of the Autobot Black Knight Alliance had gathered outside on Horai Island, from nearly every Autobot to every single Black Knight Nightmare. This large force appeared to be led by Ironhide, Ultra Magnus, and Ogi, as they stood alongside Geass, Undertone, Wheeljack, Smokescreen, Windblade, Warpath, Drift, Tamaki, Cornelia, Guilford, Chigusa, Ashley, Jean, Sokia, Joe, Grimlock, Alice, Dalk, Sancha, and Lucretia, all the humans in their respective nightmares, and even the former Viacon now known as Steve was present as well. Hovering just above them was the Ark, which was being operated solely by TAI. Standing outside on the deck were Zero, Bumblebee, Suzaku, Elita 1, Colin, RC, Rai, and Bulkhead, along with the Jetfire, Toto, Layla, Akito, Sideswipe, Ryo, Grindcore, Yukiya, Strongarm, Iyano, Jeremiah, Nonette, Gino, Monica, Orpheus, Anya, Aldrin, Maribel, Chiba, and Shink. All of the humans present were in their respective nightmares. It was deathly silent as they all gazed up at the presence of a dark shadow that would loom over Horai Island. Damocles had arrived. Its imposing figure caused everyone around to either shake with fear or look with hardened expressions. The Decepticon-built station may not be directly over the artificial island, but one of its cannons was already primed and aimed directly toward the gathered army, though it was likely to assume the main target was the Ark. The second he saw the energy beginning to build up in one of the fusion cannons, Lelouch gave the order. All Horai shields up to maximum power. Windblade, smokescreen, the second that beam fires, you move in. You got it. Smokescreen nodded. Right. Windblade said as well. Shields are up at maximum power. Fixit reported as he, Rakshata, Lloyd, Euphemia, Kagaya, Sayoko, Diathard, Toto, Misty, Claus, and several other scientists and operators were in the main control facility for the island. Let's just hope they hold up. Lloyd gulped. The cannon then opened fire. Just like when they first saw it, a massive beam of green fusion energy shot down at a diagonal angle towards Horai Island. Everyone braced themselves, expecting the absolute worst. Fortunately, the beam had impacted the shields that had expanded over the whole artificial island. Waves of fusion energy spread out in all directions over the island. While nobody was harmed, the force of the impact was enough to send a tremor that shook up the area as even waves of water were blown back. Let's go. Windblade transformed into her jet mode, prompting Smokescreen to jump and wrap his arms and legs around her just before she shot straight up. Better hope that thing of yours works, kid. Or else this will be short flight. Yeah, and you and me both. Smokescreen activated the phase shifter. They quickly flew through the shield together and into the beam, with Smokescreen closing his eyes and holding onto Windblade's jet mode as tight as he could. Fortunately, the phase shifter had worked. Even if he was the one wearing it, him holding onto Windblade at the moment of activation allowed them both to become intangible as they flew through the beam of deadly energy as if it weren't even there. Smokescreen even opened his optics to look in awe at what was the green neon energy that passed over them. Whoa! The beam had ceased its firing just as the pair had phased directly into the station. And that was when the shields all over Horai Island completely shattered. Shields are down. I repeat, the shields are down. Anna reported. How long until we get them back up? Claus questioned. Probably a day at least. Toto responded. Our shield generator overloaded the second the fusion blast ended. We were fortunate it happened when it did. Or else we would have been dealt with serious damage. Misty added. But we can't rely on the shields anymore. Do you hear that, Zero? Kagaya relayed the information to her leader. Those cannons have to be shut down soon. We can't take another blast like that. Understood. Lelouch replied. Windblade, Smokescreen, tell me you two made it inside. Yeah, we're inside. No damage reported. The phase shifter worked like a charm. Smokescreen said over the comms. We're looking for the power cores now. Windblade added. Shields will take priority, but we'll disable any of the others if we see them. Good. Lelouch was already relieved. Their whole plan depended on whether or not the phase shifter could work. If it hadn't, they would have been in real trouble. TAI, commence the attack. Move the Ark in, now. Moving in. The vessel was already quickly flying towards the hovering station. The Ark's weapons went online almost immediately as they all aimed at Damocles. Target locked. Firing now. Upon TAI's command, multiple heavy cannons opened fire while dozens of missiles. However, none of the explosive projectiles ever made contact with the station itself, thanks to the shield that surrounded it. Zero to all units, this is where we hold the line. Zero contacted all his forces. Toto, Jetfire, and Maribel will lead anyone on the Ark who can fly will intercept any Decepticon forces that are launched from Damocles. Sideswipe, Grindcore, Strongarm and the Black Wyverns will protect the Ark itself from any intruders. Ultra Magnus and Ogi will lead the ground forces to neutralize any enemy that makes it to the island. We make our stand here. Bumblebee, Suzaku, Colin, RC, Alita, Bulkhead, and Rai, you're all with me. Thanks to the schematics provided to us by Steve, we can get to the top of Damocles. That's where Megatron will likely be, and I'm certain he'll leave the door open for us, knowing him. Here they come. Bumblebee said as they saw a whole swarm of aerial Viacons pour out from the sides of Damocles and gun their way straight toward the airborne Ark, which were being led by Thundercracker, Slipstream, and Skybite. Leave them to us. All aerial units, attack now. Toto ordered as the Zangetsu was the first to take off, with Jetfire's jet mode flying next to them, and the small yet skilled team of chosen Black Knights flew from the arc to engage the enemy. Now it's our turn to move in. Let's not keep Buckethead waiting. Colin stated. Wait, something's coming from the top of the station. Alita pointed out. All eyes set toward what the blue female Autobot was pointing at. Something did emerge from the top of the station, though they couldn't get a good look at it from this distance. Is it Megatron? RC asked. Nah, bigger. Bulkhead said, looking more confused than anything. Suzaku used the Lancelot's systems to zoom in on the unidentified flying object heading in their direction, getting a clear view on his screen, but he couldn't believe what he was seeing. Is that a dragon? It was the Predacon. The metallic dragon-like beast gave a roar as it hovered above the deck of the Ark, revealing its intimidating form to the 16 remaining individuals on board. Right before its chest began to glow, the orange light traveling up its throat before it unleashed a blazing inferno down onto them. Move! Lelouch exclaimed as all the Autobots and Nightmares scattered to avoid the large fireball that struck the hull and exploded. They all gazed up once more to the roaring Predacon that circled around them in the sky. A dragon? Are you fucking kidding me? Colin shouted incredulously. Let's blow it out of the sky. Rai had his Raiden Surger already charged with electricity. No, you all stay focused on Megatron. Akito reminded. Leave this to us. He's right, we can't get distracted. Alita agreed. Lelouch gritted his teeth. He hated when an unknown variable appeared out of nowhere, but who could have expected a dragon? You'd think after everything he's seen up till this point, from alien godly magic to literal zombies, that he really wouldn't be surprised by anything anymore. Looks like he was wrong once again. But they still had a job to do. Alright, we'll leave it to you. Let's move. Zero ordered as the Shinkiro picked up Bumblebee and flew forward, with RC hoping onto the Gurren as it and the Lancelot, which had picked up Alita, flew next while the Raiden picked up Bulkhead. The group of 8 flew in the direction that would lead them to the top of Damocles. However, the Predacon also saw them and was about to fly in pursuit. We can't let that thing get in their way. Black Wyverns, form Hercules. Layla ordered as the blue Geass sigil appeared in her eyes. Yeah. Akito, Ryo, Yukiya and Ayano all shouted simultaneously as blue rings formed in each of their own eyes. The enigma of combination glowed as all 5 separate Alexander units combined together to create the combiner known as Hercules, which shot into the air. Find a way to bring it down here so we can help. Sideswipe contacted. Yeah, so we can introduce it to our fists. Grindcore pounded his fists together. The Predacon flew in pursuit of Zero's group and was ready to blast them out of the sky, only for the Hercules to fly up faster and draw its sword to slash up its side and draw its attention. Hey, over here you oversized lizard. Ayano shouted as the Hercules, left arm unveiled a large cannon to shoot the Predacon in the face, but this only angered the beast as it flew in pursuit of the Nightmare Combiner. Oh, I think we got its attention. Yukiya said. So, now what? Back to the Ark. We'll overpower it with Sideswipe and the others. Layla replied. Incoming. Ryo warned as the Predacon had tucked its wings in to dive towards the fleeing Hercules, catching it with its enormous body and falling straight towards the outer hull of the Ark, slamming down the combiner hard, and shaking everyone inside. The Predacon had pinned the Hercules down with its claws and was ready to incarnate it, but Grindcore had rushed to deck it across the face and shake it off. When the Predacon turned towards him, multiple energon blasts were shot at its side as Sideswipe and Strongarm ran around it while firing with their respective long-range weapons, but the Predacon was quick to swipe its tail at the both of them to send them flying and crashing into a nearby wall. Grindcore tried to rush it again and grab it by the throat. Hold still you lousy. Grindcore held on as tight as he could, but the Predacon shook its head around in all directions before sending Grindcore flying off. But this gave the Hercules time to recover as it hovered above the metallic dragon and raised its sword high with both hands. Layla and her whole team gave mighty yells as they shot downward to bring the blade down hard onto the Predacon's skull. And it seemed that the blade had managed to cut through and even draw energon. We got it. Ryo cheered. Headshot baby. Yukiya exclaimed. No, Akito's eyes widened in a panic as he saw the glow in the Predacon's throat. We only scratched the surface. Disband now. Layla screamed, seeing what was about to happen next. The Hercules had separated itself into the 5 Alexanders that made up its form just as the Predacon unleashed a fire blast from its mouth. The resulting explosion sent all 5 of them scattered in various directions across the Ark's hull. Though for the most part, despite the intense heat and powerful blast, 4 of the Alexanders were still operable. Layla! Akito exclaimed in shock as it seemed that hers had taken the worst of it. It wasn't completely destroyed, but most of its limbs were blown off, and even Layla had been knocked unconscious as she laid in the broken cockpit. What kind of monster is that? Ayano's face paled at the roaring Predacon. Strongarm had just recovered with Sideswipe to see what had happened before accessing her comms. We need backup on the Ark, stat. Send Grimlock. I repeat, send Grimlock. Sideswipe added, feeling they would need their heaviest hitter for this. The Predacon marched its way towards the downed Alexander that had Layla inside, only for Grindcore and the other units of the Black Wyverns to stand in its way. Don't think so, ugly. Grindcore challenged. You want Layla, you go through us. Ryo added. Once more, the Predacon let loose its demonic roar. But before it could go on the attack, a ground bridge portal had opened in front of it, and the next thing it saw was a ramming metallic shoulder in its face, courtesy of the charging Grimlock. As it was pushed back, Grimlock pressed on as he charged right at its belly, where he caught a brief look at the unfamiliar insignia on its chest before grabbing and flipping it over on its back. Whoa! Yukiya's eyes widened. Someone called. Grimlock asked as he turned to the others. Thanks, Ayano breathed in relief. What is that thing? The Dinobot questioned. We don't know, some kind of robot dragon. Ryo responded. Or a Cybertronian reptile. Akito deduced. But we can't overpower it. It's tougher than anything we have. Grimlock turned around to see the Predacon standing upright once more. Nothing is tougher than me. I'll handle it. He yelled at the Predacon in challenging style, the beast roaring at him in response before they both charged at one another. Right as they were about to clash, Grimlock had jumped high into the air before falling and slamming both his arms and legs on the Predacon's back to knock it down. He then quickly grabbed it by the joints of its wings. Come on, let's go for a ride. He pulled up hard, causing the Predacon to roar as it took to the sky before attempting to shake him off, causing Grimlock to stomp down as he pulled even harder. This forced the Predacon to fall off the side of the Ark and back towards the ground. Can he really take that monster on by himself? Ao asked. Grimlock's the toughest bot alive. He'll handle it, Sideswipe said in assurance. Right now, we have to help Layla. Akito said. However, another ground bridge portal opened, drawing the attention of the 7 heroes as Steeljaw and the Thanatos both stepped out. A shame, really, Steeljaw commented. I was hoping that Predacon would tear you all to pieces. I'm actually thankful. Shin smiled malevolently. Because it gives me the opportunity to do so with myself. Raw, not these guys again. Ryo growled. On the ground, Ultra Magnus and all his forces saw the explosions that rang above as the Ark and Damocles hovered in the air. The sounds of thunder that echoed through the sky made everyone else feel a little nervous. Of course, there was also the fact that Grimlock had to leave the main force to deal with this Robo-Dragon, with the irregulars flying off to provide aid. Even if they still had large numbers on their side, the fact that arguably their strongest players were not among them at the moment made them all a little nervous. Cornelia happened to notice Steve looking rather tense, not that she could blame him. Hey, she got his attention as the cockpit in her nightmare opened, allowing her to stand up so she can speak to him directly. One defector to another, you don't have to be here. You can leave any time you wish. Steve shook his head. I'm not sure there's anywhere in the world that's safe now. But, that doesn't matter. I'm here now, might as well see this thing through to the end. Cornelia only smiled. Alright, but, I got your back. Thanks. Steve nodded. Heads up everyone. Ogi got their attention as more than a few ground bridge portals opened in front of them. Pouring out of them were multiple enemy Vehicons, all of whom were in their vehicle modes as they drove at high speeds, while also producing their blasters from their sides to open fire. They would soon be followed by several tank Vehicons. And those at the head of this attack force were none other than Knockout and Fracture. Open fire. Ultra Magnus ordered. Do not let a single Decepticon make it past us. With that order, all the Autobots and Black Knight Nightmares fired. Shots of energon and bullets, along with heavy blasts of energy, all rained forward onto the Decepticon attack force. The frontmost forces of the cons were taken out by the blast, save for Knockout and Fracture, who were quick enough to maneuver past the blasts. But the bulk of the enemy soon transformed upon closing the distance, the opposing forces clashing against each other. Grimlock and the Predacon continued to wrestle and tumble through the sky, coming closer towards the ground, with the dragon-like beast trying to shake off the Dinobot, but he kept a firm grip on the joints of the wings. He had initially tried to yank them off, but they were too strong even for him. So, Grimlock then transformed into his T-Rex and bit down on the Predacon's neck. The sudden shift in weight caused the Predacon to spiral out of control as they both crashed hard on the metallic ground of Horai Island. They were some distance away from the main battle, but far enough not to get caught up in it or vice versa. Upon landing, Grimlock had transformed back into his normal Cybertronian mode as he stumbled a bit, slightly shaken from the fall, before straightening out as a shadow loomed over him. He turned around to look in shock as the Predacon had not only already recovered, it quickly rushed to headbutt him and send him rolling across the ground. But the Predacon didn't stop there. It had grabbed Grimlock with its claws and flown upwards before slamming him down, and then proceeded to drag him across the ground as the Dinobot tried to wrench himself free. He even tried pounding the Predacon in the face, but that only angered the beast, who then bit down onto Grimlock's shoulder and threw him off to the side. The Predacon would have kept up its assault, only for something fast to dash past its face, slashing it up with a pair of blades. The Predacon turned towards the hovering Pegasus with a growl. "Get the hell away from him!" Alice exclaimed. Before the metallic beast got a chance to retaliate, it was pounded in the side by a volley of energon fire, courtesy of Lucretia's tungsten nightmare. This allowed the Ryujin and Scorpio to come in directly at its front. Sancha's unit sliced at the neck area, causing the head to move up before Dalk's nightmare thrusted its flamethrowers into its face to push it down from the force alone. "Dragon meets dragon," Dalk stated. "Dalk, watch out," Sancha warned as the Predacon's tail had come in to slam into the Ryujin and knock it down closer towards the recovering Grimlock as the rest of the irregulars regrouped to face the beast. First zombies, then a giant worm monster, now this. "Where does Shockwave get all this stuff?" Lucretia questioned. "Doesn't matter, we'll turn it to scrap like everything else." Alice's eyes narrowed. "Watch yourselves," Grimlock advised as all five of them faced the roaring Predacon together. "This won't be a cakewalk." Meanwhile, Zero's team had flown towards the top of Damocles, the four Nightmares carrying their respective Autobot allies as they spotted the courtyard that surrounded the black castle that was perched atop the massive station. "Okay, did those guys seriously build a castle on top of that thing?" Rai questioned. "They even got a fancy royal courtyard." Colin looked with disgust. "This thing was supposed to be made for Britannians, what do you expect?" Bulkhead replied. "Let's stay focused," Alita told them. "Can you see any shields?" Suzaku scanned the area with the Lancelot's sensors. "No shields in this area. Guess he is expecting us. Then let's not keep him waiting," RC said as the eight of them moved in. The four Autobots present were set down as the Nightmares landed beside them. Not long after they touched down, the large door had opened as the leader of the Decepticons slowly stepped out, with his top scientist right behind him. The second they saw him, all humans and Cybertronians quickly felt a burning fire form in each of their stomachs. This was the same monster that had killed many of their closest friends, directly or indirectly, ruined countless lives, and had evaded justice so many times. He would not be getting away this time. They'll make sure of it. "Welcome, all of you," Megatron greeted. "You know, aside from dear Ariel," that comment caused Alita to narrow her eyes. "Those that stand before me are among the few who helped started all of this." Three of Optimus' closest cohorts, who had first appeared before Britannia on the night of Suzaku's execution. Another one of the late Clovis Little experiments, and by extension, another child of the late Charles. The fearsome pilot of the Red Nightmare who is always by Zero's side. And of course, our White Knight and his new master. It's rather poetic, that it began with us, and now it'll end with us. "Shut up," Lelouch growled. "I'm tired of listening to your voice." "Is that so?" Megatron mused. "Tell me, Lelouch, how exactly do you plan to dispose of me, seeing as I am now immortal?" How about I put you in stasis and drop you into a black hole? Let's see if that works. Lelouch replied. Megatron's smile only grew as he drew his blade. Take your best shot. He was the first to charge forward as Shockwave provided cover fire with his cannon. The heroes scattered as it looked like Megatron was heading straight for the Shinkiro, only for the Lancelot to bar his path as Suzaku had drawn his MVS blades and swung one of them at Megatron, who blocked it with his own blade before throwing a punch into the Lancelot's stomach. But as the White Nightmare went up, the Black One fired a couple of Hadron blasts at the Decepticon leader. This pushed him back slightly as Bumblebee rushed to open fire with his own Energon blasters, prompting Megatron to quickly grab him by the head and slam him down, but this allowed Alita to come in with a jump and wrap her legs around his head before pulling herself down to yank him down as well, but he was quick to roll over and grab Alita and tried to throw her off the station entirely, but Suzaku quickly flew in to catch her before that happened. Bumblebee and the Shinkiro then charged in at Megatron from both sides. Bulkhead gave a roar as swung his mace at Shockwave, who dodged the swing before backhanding him with his cannon to knock him back. The Raiden rolled forward to ram into Shockwave, pushing him back, but Shockwave dug his feet in and grabbed Ray's Nightmare by its chest unit before hauling him over to slam him into the ground. He then felt a shot to the back of his head and turned towards the smirking RC. "Remember, me," she said before firing, aiming at his eye. Only for Shockwave to block the blast with his cannon and fired at the ground under RC to send her flying backwards. "Yes. And I will not fall for the same trick twice." He readied his cannon again and fired, but the Gurren landed in front of the downed RC and actually caught the blast in the Surger's active claw before Colin let loose all that energy, both from Shockwave's attack, as well as the Surger's, sending an energy wave that pushed him back. "I've got some tricks for ya, you damn Cyclops." Colin glared. "Wanna see 'em?" Smokescreen held Windblade by her hand as they phased into a large chamber that contained an enormous tube of active energy that stretched from the floor up to the ceiling. "Is this it?" Smokescreen asked. "Which core do you think this one is?" Windblade looked around at some of the machines attached to the core at the floor and ceiling. "Probably the shields. Output seems to be going in all directions, which would only work if you needed to provide energy in the same area. Then let's take it down before any guards show up." Smokescreen had aimed his Energon blaster and was ready to open fire, only for a few blasts of Energon to come at them from above, causing them to step back. The one who shot at them was none other than Soundwave, who leapt down from the ceiling before producing Ravage and Rumble. "Looks like we got some Snoopy Autobots that need a serious pounding," Rumble said enthusiastically as Ravage growled. "Scrap." Windblade cursed as she drew her blades while Smokescreen opened fire. Meanwhile, in the med bay, Ratchet, Cecile, Perceptor, and the former student council else worked to the absolute best of their abilities to keep Optimus online as long as possible. "His Energon flow is slowing down considerably," Perceptor reported. "Can't we just inject more into him?" Rivals asked. "His internal processors are so severely traumatized, they're inoperable," Nina answered. "All it would do is just overflow his system." "Can't we fix them somehow?" Millie asked. "They operate on a submicronic level, we don't have the means to repair them." Cecile answered. "What about the forge? Can't we use that?" Shirley asked, looking toward the ancient hammer. "No, we can't, because only a prime can wield it," Ratchet stated. "None of us have that title, so we wouldn't even be able to use the forge's power." As they continued to work and debate, Sarah honestly felt completely useless. She had no idea what any of them were saying, so there was little she could do to help. She turned towards Nunnally, who remained close by weakened Optimus' face. She slowly walked towards the younger girl. Even if she couldn't make sense out of all this science stuff, she could at least do this. "We'll figure it out," she tried to say to Nunnally. I don't know how, but we will." Nunnally turned to her with a teary-eyed smile. Who? Optimus' weakened voice drew their attention. "Stands before me. Wah, Optimus. It's me, it's Nunnally," she tried to say, but he didn't appear to notice her or anyone else around him. Who beckons, his voice was growing weaker, the light in his optics growing dimmer. "Come Optimus," a familiar voice said as the Prime found himself in a dark void, walking toward a bright light in front of him. "Is it truly you, Alpha Trion?" Optimus found himself facing the bright spectral form of his late mentor that stood within the light. I stand before you, my student. As such, it would seem that it is your time. Alpha Trion confirmed, but he noticed the look of uncertainty on Optimus' face. Why do you hesitate? I do not fear joining with the Allspark, Optimus said. But, for the fate of the planet Earth and those who fight for it, and for the matrix of leadership. You know as well as I that you have found a worthy successor, one who will learn to be a prime, as you once did. Alpha Trion replied. And, it is that very same person who will guide his people out of the coming darkness. Alpha Trion, how is it possible for someone who is not a Cybertronian to bear the matrix of leadership? Optimus asked. Do you ever wonder, Optimus, why Megatron was never able to find it? Alpha Trion responded with a question of his own. He swore to claim the matrix for himself and even destroyed Cybertron in order to do so, and yet he never found it. Rather, it presented itself to you. Because the core to our planet was dying. Optimus remembered. Primus chose to pass a piece of his spark onto me so that there could still be a possibility to restore our home. Indeed. But as well, the matrix of leadership is not found, it is earned. Alpha Trion continued. You were given the matrix because you had earned it and proved yourself worthy as a true prime. As such, the boy that you have mentored has grown into a being that has also earned the privilege to carry the matrix. The difference in species does not matter. I had offered it to him, but he rejected it. Optimus said. And that makes him all the more worthy. Alpha Trion replied. He chose to reject power for the sake of someone he cares for. That is why Megatron could never find it, because he only sought the matrix for the power it wielded. And now, the time has come, for Lelouch to take the torch, and light a new future for his people and our own. Meanwhile, the battles continue to rage across the sky and ground around Horai Island as the Autobots and Black Knight forces threw everything they had at the invading Decepticons, with Damocles continuing to hang over them. TAI controlled the Ark and fired every known weapon she could at the station, but its shields proved to be strong enough to protect it. Even if her main goal was to draw out the Decepticon army, she could at least keep up the barrage with the hopes of breaking through the barrier. At the same time, the air forces all around and in between the two opposing hovering objects continued to clash as more explosions lit up the sky. Decepticon scum, take this, the storm of my loyalty. Jeremiah's Siegfried launched a volley of missiles to take out several airborne Viacons. Seemingly unaware of Slipstream leading a squadron of Seekers behind him. Concentrate all your fire on Orange. Blow that stain out of the sky. She and her Seeker squadron let loose several more missiles at Jeremiah, many of them managing to hit as he was blown back with a growl. However, Slipstream's squadron was broken apart by a Hadron blast from the Mordred. Their line is broken. Move in, Anya exclaimed. Right. Nonette flew forward in the Galician, followed by the Tristan Divider, and Florence Nero. Nice to have the gang back together. Gino smiled. Save it until after we win this. Monica stated as they engaged the scattered Seekers, blowing them out of the sky with their long-ranged weapons while the Galician flew directly towards Slipstream's jet mode, who proceeded to transform and grapple with the Nightmare as the two glared at one another. Maribel grunted as the side of her Lancelot trial was rocked by an energon blast from a flying Viacon, but she was quick to retaliate and shoot it out of the sky. Aldrin and Orpheus were both quick to fly and surround her and provide covering fire. Weren't they just in fighting? Where do these cons keep coming from? Orpheus questioned. Just keep firing, Aldrin told her brother. Heads up, more incoming. Maribel warned as a line of jet Viacons were barreling down on them, only for a Hadron blast to shoot above the trio of Nightmares and blow them away. The Nightmare responsible for that was the Agravain. Thanks, Orpheus said to his uncle in a somewhat neutral yet grateful tone. Don't mention it, Oegros smiled. Amongst the fighting, Jetfire and Thundercracker both engaged in a dogfight as the latter chased the former in an attempt to shoot him down, but Jetfire transformed and let himself fly backwards. While Thundercracker was able to avoid Jetfire himself, the Arielbot transformed again and turned the dogfight in his favor as he resumed fire, chasing the Blue Seeker. Toto had sliced one Viacon in half with his Nightmare's katana before firing a slash Harkin to take down another on the side. There's too many of them. Colonel, watch out. Chiba quickly flew in with her Akatsuki, brandishing her katana to fight off the charging Sky Bite in his shark mode, but the force of his charge shattered her blade and sent her rolling across the sky. But Sky Bite was forced to fall back as Shinki's Shen, who had unleashed its Baryon cannon, which also managed to obliterate a few other Viacons. Meanwhile, on the deck of the Ark, despite having the advantage in numbers, the remaining Black Wyverns and their Autobot friends were having a difficult time against Steeljaw and the Thanatos. Grindcore gave a yell as he charged at Shin's advanced Nightmare, grabbing and tackling it to the ground. Psycho, Meat Fist. He tried to pound him while he was down, but Shin had swung up his Nightmare's sword to push back Grindcore before grabbing him by the face and throwing him down hard to the ground, where Steeljaw had slashed his claws at Sideswipe, who parried them with his sword but was knocked down from the wolf-like Decepticon's onslaught. However, Steeljaw was also forced back as Strongarm and Yuki's Alexander fired at him with their long-distance weapons, forcing him to transform and drive in a semi-circle formation before gunning straight for them both and evading all their shots. He transformed back and used the momentum from his gathered speed to pounce onto both of them, but was then kicked back by Ayano in her Alexander as she pressed the attack with her Nightmare's sword, but Steeljaw was quick to catch the blade and punch her Nightmare down. The Thanatos quickly descended from the ground and dropped its right foot onto Grindcore to further embed him into the ground, but would soon find himself facing off against Ryo's Alexander as he drew his axe to hack and slash at him. "Quit trying to kill us all the time, you damn freak," Ryo exclaimed as he brought his Nightmare's axe down, but the Thanatos easily blocked it with its sword before spinning around to swipe its tail and sever the Alexander's legs. "But where's the fun in that?" Shin smirked. "You have a very twisted perception of fun, brother." His attention was drawn by his younger half-brother's voice as his Alexander stood protectively in front of the one where the unconscious Layla continued to reside. "Are you and Layla close at all, Akito?" Shin asked. "If so, I'd be more than happy to send you both to hell where you can spend eternity together." "Not if I kill you first." Akito rushed his older brother, his Alexander Liberté drawing its katana to engage in a brutal sword duel against the larger Thanatos. At the same time, the forces on the ground didn't appear to be faring any better. Several of the Actasukas piloted by the Black Knight forces were already taken down by the onslaught of Decepticon fire, but that didn't stop them from taking more than a few cons down with them. Ironhide let loose with everything he had from his cannons, blasting away any Viacon he saw, but two tank Viacons came at his sides and transformed to grab and tackle him and force him down as a third one transformed into a tank in front of him and prepared to fire, only for it to go up in a blaze of glory from a volley of missiles. "Hell yeah, you like that," Tamaki exclaimed as he and Warpath stood in a line with several heavily armored Wrecker Akatsukis. "Light 'em up," Warpath ordered as he transformed into his own tank mode, and they let loose a volley of explosive fire to blast away any incoming Viacons, allowing Ironhide to transform and escape from the two that had him grappled, both of which were quickly blown away as well. Chigusa and Guilford were forced to come back to back in their respective nightmares as they tried to return fire from the surrounding Viacons, but they were quickly outnumbered and would soon be overwhelmed. That is if it weren't for Wheeljack, who drove in on one side and transformed to draw his blades slice a Viacon in two. Half of the Viacons were drawn to him as they opened fire, forcing the Wrecker on the defensive as he used his swords to parry the blasts. At the same time, Geass came up to face the other half of the Viacon group, launching Undertone at one Viacon and knocked him down with a flying kick. Geass then used his Energon Grappler to haul in one Viacon and pound him into the ground. All the Viacons that were focused on Wheeljack and Geass, however, were shot down by Chigusa and Guilford now that they had room to work. Drift was knocked back as he used his katanas to parry the blades of Fracture, while Jetstorm and Safeguard were locked in combat against Eraser and Divebomb respectively. However, the old Autobot and his students all appeared to be quickly overwhelmed as Fracture kicked Drift down. "I've waited a long time for this, Drift." Fracture tried to lunge his blade at him, but Drift brought his katana up to keep it at bay, but it was hard to push back. Joe, Ashley, Jean, and Sokia were at the front line with Ultra Magnus to try and keep the invading Decepticons at bay. However, while they and the Akatsukis near them were able to shoot down the smaller Viacons, the larger tank varieties were another story as they all transformed and fired their heavy artillery, already taking down more than half the forces that were beside them. "Ah, fall back," Ultra Magnus ordered as he and those near him were forced to retreat. Steve had shot down one Viacon with his own Energon blaster. But he was knocked down by a punch from a larger tank Viacon. Burn, traitor. He readied his main weapon to blast him, only to have his head blown off by a lunge from a spear wielded by the custom Vincent piloted by Cornelia. The nightmare offered its hand to Steve. I told you I would have your back, Cornelia said with a smile inside her cockpit. Steve accepted the gesture and was helped to his feet. Thanks, I appreciate that. Ogi grunted as he fired the Gawain Neuron's Hadron cannons into a group of Viacons but still saw more incoming. There's no end to them. Suddenly, he found his nightmare being brought down as most of its weapons were no longer operable. What the? He tried to start them back up, but there was no response. Oops. Knockout smirked as he casually walked in front of the downed Gawain with his buzzsaw hand. Looks like someone disabled your weapons. Now how about the squishy little human inside? He activated his buzzsaw again and lunged it at him, but the Gawain threw out a punch to not only push back the saw but even knock down the red Decepticon, despite the arm receiving damage from that. I'm not going down without a fight, Ogi vowed as he pushed his nightmare up. Ground forces are being pushed back, Toto reported. Our guys in the air aren't doing much better, Claus added. Layla is down, and Akito's team appears to be in trouble, Misty said as well. But where are Grimlock and the Irregulars? K-Gaia questioned. Dalk screamed as her Ryujin was smacked down by a swipe of the Predacon's claws. It then hovered in the air and let loose an inferno, waving its head in multiple directions to send spiraling flames at the flying nightmares piloted by the rest of the Irregulars as they tried their best to avoid them. However, Alice's Pegasus proved quick enough to avoid most of them as she gunned straight for the Predacon's face. But the beast had anticipated this as it pulled back its head to slam it onto the Pegasus and send Alice crashing to the ground. But just before the Predacon could descend and feast upon its prey, Grimlock had rushed and jumped upwards to tackle and knock the beast down on its back. But the Predacon pushed back with its claws to knock Grimlock off. The Dinobot quickly transformed into his T-Rex mode and let loose a roar before blasting his own plasma breath at the Predacon, who retaliated with its own fire breath. The two blasts collided and pressed against one another in a heated struggle. Grimlock pressed with as much strength as he could, but when it seemed like his firepower was about to get an edge, the Predacon somehow increased its own power and its own fire breath became stronger and quickly overcame Grimlock's breath attack, blasting the mechanical T-Rex and knocking him down. The Predacon pressed the attack by flying forward to grab Grimlock with his claws and drag him hard across the ground. However, the tungsten flew in from above and fired its Energon Gatling guns at the Predacon's wings to bring it down. The Pegasus, Scorpio, and Ryujin came at the Predacon from its sides, only for the beast to pull its wings back and throw them outward to push all three units back. But this gave Grimlock a chance to stand back up, still in his T-Rex mode, and bite down on the Predacon's neck, causing it to roar in pain before it pulling up, forcing Grimlock to let go. He tried to swing his tail at the Predacon, only for it to retaliate with its own tail swipe at its feet to knock him down once again. I can't believe, Grimlock is being overpowered, Euphemia stuttered as she saw the whole fight over one of the many monitors in the control room. Him and the whole Irregulars, Sayoko was in just as much awe. Oh my, Lloyd looked in a mixture of terror and intrigued as he saw the rampaging Predacon. I've never seen a Cybertronian like that before. Such savage and primal might. The way moves is very animalistic, Rakshata observed in a similar fashion, which suggests that this beast may be a wild animal native to Cybertron. That is a Predacon, Fixit explained, catching everyone's attention. A what? Diethard questioned. I didn't think it would be possible though, Fixit went on. You could compare them to Earth's dinosaurs, in that they existed before our kind appeared on Cybertron. But they were all wiped out in the Great Cataclysm. It was probably Shockwave, Lloyd assumed. He probably cloned one. Makes sense given all the other stuff we've seen him do, Rakshata added. Well, I'd be more worried about the fact that freaking Grimlock is getting tossed around like a rag doll, Claus exclaimed. If that monster makes it past him and his team, it'll tear through all our forces like they're nothing, K-Gaia added. And Damocles won't just float idly by, either, Diethard said as he accessed the comms. Smokescreen, Windblade, did you find the power cores? "We found the one for the shield, but it's guarded by Soundwave," Smokescreen reported. "And he's not really making it easy for us." Smokescreen fired his Energon blaster as he ran from the charging Ravage that retaliated with Energon blasts from its mouth. Rumble then proceeded to drive his pistons into the ground and send a tremor Smokescreen's way to trip him up and knock him down. Ravage used this to leap into the air and try and pounce on him, but Smokescreen quickly activated the phase shifter to phase through the ground and escape Ravage's attack. Windblade swung both her blades at Soundwave, who proved to be quick and nimble enough to dodge her strikes, using his ultra-thin arms to parry her strikes, before one of his tentacles shot from his chest to grab Windblade's sides and lift her up before slamming her to the ground. Smokescreen phased up from the floor behind Soundwave and was ready to shoot him in the back of the head, only for the silent Decepticon to activate his own resonance blaster via a second tentacle and shoot the young Autobot back and slam him against the wall. But Soundwave didn't just stop there, as he kept pressing on, adding more pressure as he focused the resonance blaster's sound on a single point in Smokescreen's chest, already causing it to crack. "Hang on, kid." Windblade got back up and was ready to help, only for Ravage to leap at her from behind and bite down on her shoulder. She yelled in pain as she was pushed back down by a jumping Rumble who slammed his pistons into her. "Worry about yourself, Autobot," Rumble said. At the top of Damocles, Colin gave a yell as the Gurren threw out its Surger Claw towards Shockwave, but he batted it away with his cannon before delivering a powerful punch to knock it down. He aimed his cannon directly at the cockpit and charged a shot, only for RC to leap onto the Gurren and land with her hands and delivered a double kick to push Shockwave back. Bulkhead's vehicle mode then rammed into Shockwave's side before he transformed to grab and shove him down. Bulkhead's right hand turned into his mace, which he used to slam into Shockwave repeatedly, but the Decepticon scientist transformed into his tank mode to throw him off and proceed to fire at him, RC, and Colin, forcing them to flee. However, a sphere of electricity shot at him from the side, courtesy of the Raiden, to throw Shockwave off before Rai pushed forward, lunging his Surger at him, but Shockwave transformed back and caught the active Surger Claw in his hand and slammed his cannon down to knock the Blue Nightmare down. Bumblebee clashed his katana against Megatron's blade, but the Decepticon leader grabbed him by the face and slammed him down onto the ground. "I'll remove more than your voice box this time," Megatron vowed, only to get knocked back by the Slash Harkins from the incoming Lancelot, that flew forward with a spinning kick to knock down Megatron. But he rolled and quickly recovered to fire his fusion cannon, landing a successful hit to blast down Suzaku. Alita charged as she shot at him in the side and drew her arm blades as she closed the distance to slash at him, but Megatron parried with his own blade before throwing his other fist into her face to push her down. He then spotted the hovering Shinkiro charging its central cannon and rolled out of the way to avoid the blast before retaliating with multiple shots from his fusion cannon, forcing the Shinkiro to fly down and avoid them, giving Megatron a chance to rush and grab Lelouch's Nightmare before throwing it away. "You can't beat me, Lelouch," Megatron told him. "You've put up a good fight, but it is time to stand down." "Never." Lelouch swore defiantly as he tried to retaliate with its arm-mounted Hadron cannons, but Megatron was already on him before he could fire and kicked him down hard and further pinned him down with his foot. "You don't understand. You have to beat me, which is impossible," Megatron continued. "But I don't. I just need to run out the clock until Damocles is ready to fire again." While keeping the Shinkiro pinned, Megatron turned around to fire at the incoming Lancelot, Bumblebee, and Alita to keep them at bay. "One last blast, and all your friends, allies, and family, they will be gone. You should have just let me win at the beginning." Lelouch gritted his teeth, trying desperately to fight back. But with all his forces stretched so thinly, and the defenses that Megatron had protecting this station, he was fighting an uphill battle, and the top was still nowhere in sight. However, his attention was caught by a sudden ping on his Shinkiro's radar, which showed an Autobot emblem moving closer. An Autobot signal. Wait, it's not coming from Horai Island, but rather, from above. Lord Megatron, a Decepticon technician, contacted his leader. A massive Autobot signal was detected entering the planet's atmosphere. You should have a visual at any moment. He would indeed see something that would not only draw his attention, but that of everyone else in the courtyard, halting all their fights as they saw what appeared to be a large Cybertronian ship flying down from the sky above. the flames around it from re-entry having been extinguished as it flew clear past Damocles. The ship wasn't nearly as big as the Ark, but it was still rather large, and it was something that Megatron recognized as he looked in shock. Impossible. The vessel had even drawn the attention of all the aerial battles taking place in between Damocles and the Ark as it flew down, halting many of them. Wait, is that? Jetfire seemed to recognize it as well. Cybertronian craft, identify yourself. TAI tried to make contact with the vessel as it seemed to be heading in the direction of Horai Island. Identity, Omega Supreme. Objective, assist Autobot allies. And he ain't the only one. The cavalry's coming in hot. A new voice added as 4 more Autobot signals were detected within the vessel. TAI's eyes widened in shock. Though she herself never seen or heard Omega Supreme herself, all the records shown that things were about to turn in their favor. Omega Supreme, drop all your forces to assist those on the ground. And then come back up here to help the others in the air. Order acknowledged. The Cybertronian ship had quickly made its way closer to the ground, causing most of the battles to stop as they ran to try and clear away from the large ship that looked like it was about to land. But it hovered in place for a moment as a bay door opened at the ship's underbelly to reveal 4 Autobots. They all bore a near identical color scheme of red, silver, and yellow, showing they were all on the same team. One was leaner and thin compared to the others, another had spikes over most of his body, a third was slightly bulkier and had glowing spines over his arms, legs and shoulders, the fourth appeared to be the largest of them all, showing no other distinguishing features other than his size. Alright Dinobots, let's show these guys how it's done. Swoop declared before jumping down and transforming into what one could only describe as a metallic pterodactyl just as Snarl, Sludge, and Slug all jumped down to join the fight as well, right before they transformed into their own respective dino modes of a Stegosaurus, a Triceratops, and a Brontosaurus respectively. As they joined the fight, the vessel they arrived in flew back up towards the sky. Swoop had flown above Ultra Magnus, Ashley, Jean, Joe, and Sokia as they held the line the best they could when they saw the flying Dinobot. Hold on, is that a Robo-Pterodactyl? Ashley questioned as Swoop opened his mouth and shot rapid-fire energon onto the Viacons below, tearing apart most of them and even a few tank varieties. One Viacon tried to shoot at him, but Swoop flown down and grabbed him by his talons before throwing him into the air just as Swoop transformed and fired his energon blaster to gun him down while he was airborne. Swoop landed on one of the bigger Viacons in his tank mode and fired into him until he exploded. He then transformed into his pterodactyl mode again and fired more rapid-fire energon from his mouth onto the last remaining tank until he too exploded. Swoop then flew to the Ultra Magnus and transformed to salute to him. Dinobots reporting for duty, Commander Magnus. He smirked. I'm assuming this is Grimlock's team. Jean asked the surprised Autobot commander. That would be correct. Ultra Magnus confirmed. Grimlock, where is he? Swoop asked. In the middle of fighting a giant robot dragon. Ashley answered. He and his allies are holding the beast at bay. Magnus added. Help us clear away most of the enemy here and then go provide aid. You got it. Swoop transformed again and flew off to engage in battle with Magnus and his group following. Slug's Triceratops mode barreled his way through several Decepticon forces, running with such speed and power that he crushed any that dared stand in his way, trampling them under feet and impaling them on his spiked head. He soon found himself heading towards the group consisting of Ironhide, Ogie, Cornelia, and Steve as they fought back against a group of Viacons led by Knockout. The metallic dinosaur gave a roar as it engaged the Viacons, much to the shock of the surprised Knockout, who was the first to get slammed and sent skidding back. Slug rammed his horns to eviscerate one Viacon before pulling back his rear feet to destroy a second. He lifted his front feet up briefly to smash a third in before transforming into his robot mode to punch down a fourth and firing powerful energon blasts from his hands to destroy the last 2 surrounding him. Ah, look at what you've done. Knockout called to Slug and gestured to his semi-caved chest. This is gonna take more than a buffer. I can do worse if you wanna see. Slug fired his energon blaster at him, forcing Knockout to duck before transforming and driving away. He then looked towards Ironhide's group before spotting the Viacon in their midst. One more. Stand down, Slug, Ironhide said as he stood in front of Steve. He's with us. Really? Slug looked in surprise. Why yes, I am. Steve confirmed nervously. Oh. Slug seemed to buy it as he lowered his blaster. Sorry. Thanks for the help, Ogi said. No problem. Slug nodded before transforming into his Triceratops mode again and rejoined the battle. Huh, that went better than expected. Cornelia commented. Slug is reasonable and even polite when he wants to be. Ironhide said. But he can also be very insulting, and you do not want to get him angry at you. Noted. Cornelia accepted. Geass, Undertone, Chigusa, Guilford, and Wheeljack appeared to be surrounded by several Viacons, including a few tankers, all of whom were ready to unleash a deadly inferno upon them, only for a large robotic Stegosaurus to come barreling in and stomping through 3 of the Viacons, including a tank that Snarl hauled up with his head to flip over before stomping down repeatedly to crush it. The remaining 5 Viacons opened fire, prompting Snarl to transform into his robot form as he extended blades on his arms, which took the form of Stegosaurus, spines and glowed red right before he charged forward. He sliced up the one in the middle with an upward swing before slamming his arm to the right to obliterate the one next to him. He brought his left arm down onto a third Viacon to slice and crush him at once before rushing the last to destroy them the same vicious way. He then turned to the Autobots with a friendly smile. Hey Geass. Sup, Snarl. Thanks for the save. Geass greeted back as Undertone nodded. Not bad, for a wannabe wrecker. Wheeljack cracked. Wannabe. How many times have we shown you guys up? Snarl snarked back. Love to chat more, but got cons to crush. He transformed back into his Stegosaurus mode and rejoined the fight. These are the Dinobots. Guilford looked nothing short of awed. Incredible. If they were present when Britannia was still around, I feel like we wouldn't have lasted a day. Chigusa thought, being very grateful to be on the bots' side now. Tamaki, Warpath, and the remaining Wrecker Akatsukis tried to hold the line against a line of tank Viacons, while nearby Drift was remaining pinned under Fracture's foot as Eraser and Divebomb had Safeguard and Jetstorm at their mercy. Got any last words, old bot? Fracture said sadistically. Yes. 2 actually. Drift said as he saw a shadow loom over them. Behind you. Fracture turned around just in time to see a large tail get slammed into him to send him flying up and over Tamaki and Warpath and crashed into the group of Viacons they were fighting. All eyes then set on the robotic Brontosaurus that let loose a roar before unleashing a plasma attack from its mouth onto them. Though it wasn't as powerful as Grimlock's, it was still enough to roast most of the Viacons. Fracture tried to transform and flee, but as he did, Sludge's tail had come in to swipe him up into the air and fell down hard on the ground. The last thing Fracture would ever see would be Sludge's raised front feet before they were brought down to crush him completely. Master! Eraser exclaimed in shock. No. Divebomb was just as horrified. But this left them open for Safeguard and Jetstorm to knock them back and aim their weapons at them, with Drift joining his students with his katanas drawn. I would advise you two, to surrender. Drift warned. The 2 mini-cons conceded and raised their hands in defeat. Sludge transformed back into his robot form as he gazed at the Nightmares and Warpath. Holy shit, now that's what I'm taking about. Tamaki exclaimed with a grin. Thanks man, we owe ya. Warpath gave a thumbs up. Yeah, you do. Sludge said rather rudely. Grimlock was thrown back hard in his normal mode and struggled to get up as the 4 irregulars stood their ground near him, but their units appeared to be heavily damaged. It was honestly a miracle they were even operable. Guys, I don't think we can win this, Sancha said as the growling Predacon made its way toward them in a menacing formation. We can't beat this thing, even Lucretia agreed. But we have to keep going, Dalk said. He's right, Alice said with a determined expression. I won't let this monster get to Nunnally or anyone else on this island. Then we make our stand here, Grimlock said as he stood up, ready to face the beast. Or how about we lend a hand? Grimlock looked up in shock at the sound of the familiar voice and was surprised to see a robotic pterodactyl fly in. What? Yahoo! Swoop flew in and let loose more rapid-fire blasts from his mouth all across the Predacon's back as he flew above and past him. The Predacon roared in Swoop's direction and would have flown after him, but was caught off guard as the Triceratops mode and Stegosaurus mode of Slug and Snarl came in from both sides and sandwiched the Predacon, slamming into it with such dual force that it shook the mighty beast and allowed Sludge to charge in before transforming into his robot mode to leap up and bring both his fists down onto its face to disorient it before transforming again into his Brontosaurus mode to blast some fire point blank. Grimlock, Alice looked in awe with her friends. Are they? Mateem, he honestly couldn't believe it. For what felt like the first time in a very long time, Grimlock felt relief and joy. His team, his friends, they were here. Right when he arguably needed them most. You're here. Sorry it took so long, Grim. Swoop said as he hovered above his leader in his pterodactyl mode. We found Omega Supreme and had to fix him up before we could leave Cybertron. Lucky we showed up when we did, things look pretty dicey here. I'll fill you in later. Grimlock said. But for now, he turned to the irregulars. Alice, you and your friends take a rest. Your nightmares look like they're about to fall apart. My team and I can take it from here. You do that. Alice accepted. We'll just enjoy the show. Dalk said with a confident smile as she had a good idea what was about to happen next. The Predacon had recovered from the assault as it growled dangerously at the regrouping 5-bot team. The Pterodactyl mode of Swoop, the Triceratops mode of Snarl, the Stegosaurus mode of Slug, and the Brontosaurus of Sludge all stood or hovered in Swoop's case around Grimlock as he walked into the center before transforming into his T-Rex mode and roared. Dinobots, destroy! Grimlock roared as they all charged at the Predacon, who charged forward in return. Oh my, oh my, oh my. Lloyd looked absolutely giddy like a child. These are the fabled Dinobots. Marvelous, simply marvelous. Rakshata seemed calm on the surface, but her eyes danced with excitement as they saw the battle. Such incredible power, Kagaya was in awe along with Diethard, Claus, Sayoko, and Toto as well as Misty. They've turned the tide, Euphemia said with a wide smile. Thanks to their help, we're pushing back all the enemy ground forces. The arrival of Grimlock's team is definitely beneficial, but not as beneficial as who they brought with them. Fix-It said with a knowing smile. What are you talking about? Toto asked. Fix-It only gazed at the monitor that showed the ship the Dinobots had arrived in as it ascended back into the air. Meanwhile, the Autobot vessel had flown back to rejoin the aerial battle that had already resumed. It soon hovered itself over the much larger arc, drawing the attention of the Black Wyverns, Sideswipe, Grindcore, and Strongarm, as well as Steeljaw and Shin. Even Layla, who had regained consciousness, had emerged from her nightmare's cockpit saw the ship. The vessel then transformed, drawing the attention of every Autobot, human, and Decepticon in the air. The being stood slightly taller than the likes of Devastator as it stood on the hull of the Ark, a large glowing Autobot insignia on its chest as it revealed itself to all. I am Omega Supreme. All eyes and optics widened in absolute shock as they saw the massive Autobot. What the? Rio gasped. Holy, Gino stuttered. Even the ever-stoic Toto was caught completely off guard. Layla covered her mouth as she looked up in awe. Lloyd fell back on his rear as Rakshata dropped her pipe, both rendered completely speechless. Klaus's mouth hung open as Diethard's eyes shook in pure amazement. Euphemia, Kagaya, Misty, Toto, and even Sayoko, they all had looks of shock and awe as they saw the mighty Autobot make his grand appearance. Fix-It only gave a simple smirk as he crossed his arms and nodded with approval. Oh no, Thundercracker spoke for pretty much every other Decepticon present as to them, this was their worst nightmare coming back from the dead to haunt them. Even Steeljaw looked more than a little nervous while Shin looked enraged. How dare this abomination halt him in his mission? Omega Supreme wasted no time in going on the attack. Energy turrets activated on his shoulders while missiles fired from his shoulders. All units move out of the way. Jetfire ordered. Though he was confident Omega Supreme could avoid any friendly fire, it was better to be safe than sorry. And nobody argued as all the Black Knight nightmares dodged the incoming storm of fire that already cleared away more than half of the Decepticon forces. Steeljaw happened to turn towards the Sideswipe, Akito, and their friends as they looked ready to continue their fight. But he knew when it was time to withdraw. Shin, I think we should take our leave. The wolf-like Decepticon advised. Even the cybernetic madman had to agree. He was insane, but not stupid. Very well. He picked up Steeljaw and flew away, trying to get as much distance as they could. Yeah, you better run. Grindcore called out. I think we should get inside. Layla said, getting all their attention as they only just now noticed she had regained consciousness. Layla. Akito breathed in relief. Yeah, don't wanna get in the way of the big guy. Sideswipe gestured to Omega Supreme. Tai, we need entrance into the Ark. Our job is done here. Strongarm contacted. Roger. Toto, Jetfire, and everyone else are making their way to the ground to help Ultra Magnus and the others. Tai reported as a ground bridge portal opened in front of them. They wasted no time in stepping inside to safety as Omega Supreme had all but wiped out most of the Decepticon forces. Omega Supreme. Tai made contact. Focus all your firepower on the station in front of you. Bring down its shields. Order received. Omega Supreme charged his main weapon, the drill-like gun, and fired a powerful energy blast at Damocles. Though the shields did appear to be holding, however. Meanwhile, Thundercracker, Slipstream, and Skybite regrouped as they flew around the station to get back inside. Lord Megatron, Autobot reinforcements have arrived. Thundercracker warned. It's Omega Supreme. Megatron grunted in frustration as he and Shockwave regrouped to face their enemies, the Decepticon scientist having just received a similar alert himself. It would also appear the remainder of Grimlock's team has joined the battle. Our forces are being pushed back. Shockwave informed. Zero, Bumblebee, Suzaku, Alita, Colin, RC, Rai, and Bulkhead likewise had all regrouped and stood their ground against their mutual enemies. Though he could not see his face, Megatron could tell that Lelouch was smirking from within his nightmare, likely having received the same report from his own forces. Don't look so smug, boy. Megatron told him. I defeated Omega Supreme in the past, I can do so again. You'll have to get past us, first. Colin declared. Right, Firestorm. Right. The Gurren and Raiden underwent their combination sequence as they merged together into the combiner unit known as the Firestorm. Lelouch, let's do the same. Form the Silver King, Suzaku stated. With pleasure. The Shinkiro and Lancelot went through the same sort of transformation as their respective nightmares transformed into the Silver King. Both units stood together alongside their Autobot companions. We'll stand with you guys, till the very end. Bumblebee declared as he drew his katana, alongside RC with her Energon blasters, Bulkhead with his maces, and Alita with her own arm blades. You still don't understand, Megatron said as he and Shockwave opened fire on their enemies, having them scatter before Megatron focused his attention on the Silver King and rushed it. The combined nightmare had drawn its mighty sword and tried to bring it down on Megatron, who locked the sword with his own blade as he continued. You can pull whatever tricks you want, Lelouch. Gather as many allies to your side as you wish, but it won't matter. He pushed forward, pushing the Silver King back somewhat. Only one can truly stand against me, and you are no Optimus Prime. Lelouch growled as he gripped his controls hard. No, with a mighty push, he and Suzaku had swung their blade to throw Megatron back. I am, Zero. Take my hand and join me, Optimus. Alpha Trion's spirit offered his hand to his former student. Join with the Allspark. Optimus hesitated even still but walked forward. Though he did not offer his hand just yet, even as he saw the look of assurance in his late mentor's optics. As he said, he was not afraid to join with the Allspark, but more so for those he would be leaving behind. But even if he pushed his old mentor away, his body was beyond any hope of repair, and it would be more beneficial for all if the Forge was used to repair the core to Cybertron. He had complete and utter confidence in Lelouch and everyone else. Not only did he firmly believe they could win this war, they could bring peace to both their worlds. So maybe, it was time to let go. Optimus. No. Ratchet exclaimed as he and everyone else in the medbay saw his optics power down, and the monitors hooked to his body stop working altogether. Less than a second later, his chest plate opened to reveal the matrix of leadership as it shined brightly with a divine bright blue light upon them all and throughout the whole room. Is that? Cecile's eyes wavered at the sight of the relic. The matrix of leadership. Perceptor confirmed. But that means, Nina already felt her eyes water. He's gone. Rivals couldn't believe it, none of them could. Was he really gone? Was Optimus Prime truly gone? Shirley covered her mouth as tears were already flowing down her eyes. She remembered first laying eyes on Optimus when Lelouch and everyone brought her to the Ark and how in awe she was over not only his physical appearance but his kind and gentle nature as well. And now, he was gone. It was impossible to believe. Millie ran up to her from behind to hug and comfort her, despite the tears in her own eyes as well. Sarah felt the tears flowing down her eyes as well, much to her own surprise. She was no stranger to death, having seen it countless times with her past masters. But yet, this one seemed to have hit her where it hurts, but why? She only barely knew this metal giant. So why did it feel like she had just lost someone truly important to her? I refuse. All eyes set on Nunnally, a shadow cast over her eyes as her fists clenched shakily, her body trembling. It won't end like this. She ran towards the Forge of Solus Prime and gripped the enormous handle and tried to pull it. However, due to the enormous size and weight of the Cybertronian hammer, she was unable to move it, but that didn't stop her from trying. Come on, I won't let it end like this. Millie, Shirley, Nina, Rivals, Perceptor, Cecile and even Sarah looked to the desperate girl in sympathy. Nunnally, Millie tried to reach out to her. No. The younger girl turned around with a look that mixed sadness, desperation, and anger. Her eyes were livid as tears streamed down her eyes. Seeing such a look on her completely left Millie startled. I am not letting him go. I refuse to let it end this way. She tried once more to pull on the forge, trying with all her might to move it. Only to be surprised as the forge itself had been pulled up, causing her to fall down. She gazed up in shock to see the handle of the forge now in the hands of Ratchet. So do I, the Autobot medic said with determination. He gestured towards the mallet of the forge, causing Nunnally to look in determination as she ran towards that side and pushed on the mallet. She would soon be joined by Shirley, Millie, Rivals, Nina, Cecile, and even the amnesiac Sarah, all of whom smiled towards her, allowing Nunnally to smile emotionally back at them as they pushed with the mallet while Ratchet had gripped the handle of the forge, who was then aided by Perceptor as he also grabbed the handle. With all of them working together, they had pulled the Forge of Solus Prime towards the body of their leader and friend, his only remaining hand laying out towards the side before the handle was dropped onto it. The second the forge touched the hand, it activated. Even if Optimus' body didn't seem to carry life into it, the power of the Matrix still channeled itself into the forge somehow, as if the Matrix itself had willed the forge to activate. All eyes and optics looked in awe and wonder as they saw the Forge of Solus Prime glow, and that glow quickly spread over Optimus' body before it all exploded in a bright surge of light. Grimlock's T-Rex mode roared at the Predacon before charging in with a headbutt to push it back, but the Predacon swiped its claw at him to push him back, which Grimlock retaliated with a tail swipe to push the Predacon back even further. It was about to unleash a fire blast on him, only for Swoop to fly in with his pterodactyl mode and bombard with rapid-fire energon blasts from his mouth, drawing the Predacon's attention as it tried to shoot him down instead. This turned out to be a mistake as it left it open for Grimlock to nail it with his own plasma breath. Slug charged in his Triceratops mode from the Predacon's side and rammed into it with enough force to push the Predacon back, but it dug its claws in to halt the slide. Before it had a chance to fight back, Snarl in his Stegosaurus mode had come in to join Slug in the charge, diving underneath the Predacon's underbelly as Slug followed his lead. Their combined strength was enough to flip the dragon-like beast up and on its back, exposing its underbelly for Sludge to run in with his Brontosaurus mode before leaping up to land on its underbelly and stomped on repeatedly to try and cave it in. However, the Predacon flexed its wings and shot itself up in the air to shake Sludge off with the remaining Dinobots regrouping and then scattering to avoid the fireballs the airborne Predacon shot at them. All the while Alice and her friends continued to watch. Though they wanted to join in, their nightmares were so severely damaged that they would probably only get in the way and get themselves killed. But the Dinobots seemed to be holding their own for now, and with the rest of their allies quickly wrapping things up with the other Decepticons, it may be only a matter of time before they all join in and overwhelm the Predacon. Speaking of which, with the arrival of Jetfire, Toto, and the other aerial forces, the tide quickly turned in the favor of the Autobots and Black Knights. The Dinobots had already cut down the Decepticon forces to a manageable number already before going to help Grimlock, but now the number had decreased even more to the point where there were only about a dozen Viacons left, including Knockout, Eraser, and Divebomb. All the cons were surrounded on all sides, on the ground and in the air as all weapons were trained on them. Now might be a good time to surrender. Ultra Magnus advised. Knockout groaned as he raised his hands in defeat, prompting the remaining Viacons to do so. Please tell me that you all have a rotary buffer on hand. That takes care of all the cons down here. Ogi smiled. The airspace is cleared as well. Toto added. But Damocles is still airborne. Tai, please tell me you and Omega Supreme have managed to breach those shields. Euphemia hoped. We still haven't heard anything from Smokescreen and Windblade. Even if the enemy forces are rounded up, it won't matter if that station still hangs over us. Diethard agreed. We're firing with everything we can, and we can't seem to break through. Tai reported as she still concentrated all the Ark's firepower, with Omega Supreme adding to it, on the Damocles, but its shields are holding. Observation. These shields are strong enough to withstand even fortress-grade weaponry. Omega Supreme noted. This may be the strongest Decepticon weapon ever devised. Warning. Power surge detected within its main weaponry. He had already detected a strong buildup of energy at the fusion cannons built onto the bottom of the fortress. Back in the ruined courtyard above, Bulkhead had grappled with Shockwave, grabbing onto his cannon with both his hands and forcing him to misfire. Shockwave would have punched him down, but RC had leapt on top of Bulkhead's shoulder and performed a spin kick of her own to knock the hand back before moving to grab it. We got him. Bulkhead called out to the hovering firestorm. Let's light him up. Rice stated as the firestorm's left hand surged with an intense amount of electricity, while the right hand did the same with a powerful energy that took the form of flames. The hands were brought together to create a large cluster of heat energy and electricity. Find the logic in this. Colin called out as the firestorm threw the combined attack at Shockwave with Bulkhead and RC clearing the way just in time. The resulting explosion sent the Decepticon scientist flying backwards and crashing through the walls of the castle behind him. At the same time, the Silver King clashed its sword against Megatron's blade, who attempted to deliver a kick to it, but the Silver King flew upwards to avoid it before opening fire with a volley of energy bolts from its wings. Megatron stood his ground as he retaliated with his cannon to intercept most of the blasts, while those around him hit the ground and lit up in an explosion. But out of the smoke, Megatron's Cybertronian jet mode had flown out at speeds that Lelouch and Suzaku were unable to avoid as they were rammed out of the sky and crashed onto the ground. Megatron flew back down and opened fire while the Silver King was down, but Bumblebee and Alita provided covering fire as they rushed to protect the combined Nightmare, which was quick to stand back up as Megatron flew around before transforming and skidding to a halt. Lord Megatron, the fusion cannons are finished recharging and are ready to fire on command. Thundercracker reported. Then charge 2 of them and fire immediately. Megatron ordered. Blast the Ark and Omega Supreme out of the sky and obliterate the island below. But Lord Megatron, our forces are still down there, the Predacon included. I gave you an order. Fire. Megatron exclaimed. It didn't matter if any of his soldiers died in the blast, the Predacon included. It would destroy the enemy base, and he would sift through the rubble to capture CC and initiate Neo Ragnarok. No, Lelouch exclaimed in horror as he and Suzaku flew forward in the Silver King to re-engage Megatron. Yuffie, Tai, Damocles cannons are ready to fire again. Suzaku warned. The Ark and Horai Island are being targeted. You need to get out of there. Horai Island's shields were overloaded in the last blast, we can't get them back. Yuffie exclaimed in a panic, as everyone in the control room were in a similar state. Won't Damocles' own shields be down when it fires? Claus questioned. The big bot and the Ark can shoot it down, right? The Ark is too close. It and Omega Supreme won't be able to avoid it. Fix-It stated. Then, can the Ark come down and shield us? K-Gaia questioned. If it's at maximum power. It won't be enough. Lloyd replied as he pulled on his hair in fear. Even if the Ark is fast enough to reach us, it'll go down in flames from a blast like that, and crush everyone else below. Then let's ground bridge everyone out of here. Diethard stated. No time. And what about the civilians? They won't be protected even if they're underground. Anna replied. I hate to say this, but I think this might be it for us. Rakshata seemed resigned to it. Yuffie and K-Gaia all looked towards one another, as well as everyone else in the room in fear. Was this it? Was this really the end for them? 2 of the fusion cannons were already taking aim and ready to fire. One was pointing downward straight for Horai Island at the same angle as before, while the other was moved slightly upward, going straight for the Ark as Tai tried to pull it out of the way. Omega Supreme, you have to clear out. Tai stated from the bridges. Layla, Aikido, Sideswipe, Ryo, Strongarm, Iyano, Grindcore, and Yukiya had also arrived to look at the screen to see what was going on outside. Take evasive action. Negative. Omega Supreme replied as he placed his tractor beam hand on the hull of the Ark. I am transferring my own shield's power to that of the Ark's to further increase its defenses. I was built to protect all Autobots from Decepticon tyranny. I will serve my function. Tai could see the increase on the shield's power level beyond maximum power. Shields are up at 200%. Can't we use that to protect Horai Island? Layla questioned. We won't make it in time. Tai answered. Then let's blow the thing out of the sky. Ram it. Grindcore shouted. Aikido's eyes widened as his face paled at the sight of the cannon's energy surging at the hole that was pointing directly at them. Too late. Both fusion cannons fired simultaneously. The Ark was struck first, being the closest. With shields at maximum power provided by Omega Supreme, it seemed to take most of the damage, but the force of the resulting blast was enough to send the mighty Autobot vessel, with the enormous robot holding onto its top, spiraling out of the sky and straight towards the ocean below. The second beam was already making its way straight to the island as everyone, human, Autobot, and Decepticon looked up in clear horror at the sight of the deadly green light. Even the Predacon had its attention drawn toward it. The Decepticons, especially Knockout, were beyond terrified. They were still down here. Were they really about to be sacrificed just like that? Is this really the end? Were they all really going to die here? Some, such as Toto, Ironhide, and Ultra Magnus seemed resigned to it as their eyes closed. Everyone else looked towards those closest to them, friends and loved ones, hoping to find some solace in each other's gaze in their final moments. This included Drift with Safeguard and Jetstorm, Cornelia and Guilford, and even Steve, Gino, Nonette, and Anya, Ogi and Chigusa, Orpheus with Monica, Uldren, Maribel, and even Wigros, Jazz, Undertone, Jetfire, and Wheeljack, Chiba and Joe, Ashley and Jean, even Tamaki and Warpath. Even the Dinobots looked at one another, with Grimlock not only gazing at his team, but Alice and the others as they looked in fear and sadness at their imminent end. Your Highness, I'm sorry. Shink thought. Lelouch, Nunnally, forgive me. I failed you again. Jeremiah and Marianne both prayed simultaneously. Flash. Asterisk. Something truly unexpected had just happened. Something that none of them had seen coming. Something had suddenly arrived right before the blast could hit. And in that instant, a bright blue energy barrier had expanded in a semi-curved shape to protect not only all those below, but even most of the island itself. The deadly energy waves from the fusion blast washed over the barrier like water to stone. The light show was almost beautiful in a way. All eyes, from those on the battlefield, to those in the control room, were drawn by the phenomena. A few seconds later, the last of the energy waves had vanished and the barrier had retracted back to its source, the Skyboom shield, which was wielded by none other than Optimus Prime. The leader of the Free Autobots was alive. Not only that, but he was also looking better than ever. His chassis appeared to have undergone a huge overhaul. He was much larger now, his body appearing bulkier, and he even hovered in the air courtesy of a jetpack now equipped to his back. In one hand he held the Skyboom shield, and in the other, he held the Star Saber, both glowing brightly in his grip. Oh Optimus, Ogi felt his heart stop for a moment. They all did. Nobody could believe what and who they were seeing. Many of them had seen their mighty leader on the brink of death, but now he was back and appeared even stronger. Nearly every human present felt tears of joy coming down their eyes, Cornelia being one of them, as even Toto couldn't stop himself from smiling. Every Autobot looked in either amazement or simply smiled, especially those that knew him. Can't keep a good bot down. Ironhide was beyond happy to see his oldest friend back in action. All the captive Decepticons themselves couldn't help but be amazed. Despite him being the enemy leader, they all felt a profound sense of gratitude in the fact that their lives were spared. While it was likely to assume that he did it to save his own allies, they were still grateful to at least be alive. Though Knockout couldn't help but smirk. Nice new build. The red Decepticon commented. Whoa, is that Prime? Swoop questioned. What in the Allspark happened to him? Sludge questioned as well. Alice almost felt herself crying when she saw him. It was so easy to understand why Nunnally looks up to him so. Grimlock said nothing, but underneath his faceplate, he felt himself smile eagerly. But his attention and everyone else's was caught by the roar of the Predacon as it set its eyes on Optimus and would have gone on the attack had the Grimlock not leapt up to grab it by its neck and pull it back down. Gawk later. Crush this thing now. Grimlock ordered as the rest of the Dinobots piled on top of the beast. Optimus' attention was also drawn by the roar as he caught a glimpse of the Predacon. That was certainly a surprise, but it seems that Grimlock and his team could handle it. It was a pleasant surprise to see them alive and well again. While still hovering, he turned back to all his forces. You have all done exceptionally well here. But now you can take a rest. I will finish this, Optimus said. Optimus, Lelouch, Bumblebee and the others, they're on top of that thing. Fighting Megatron, Ogi informed him. Understood. Optimus nodded before flying straight up towards Damocles. Whoa, since when can he fly? Gino questioned. I'm not complaining. Geass grinned. Tamaki gave a hearty laugh. Watch out Megatron. You are so screwed now. I don't believe it, Toto stuttered. Holy crap, Claus muttered as everyone in the control room looked in absolute shock. Lloyd and Rakshata felt their jaws drop. Anna covered her mouth as tears were in her eyes. Sayoko's eyes danced in awe. Diathard shook in his spot as he felt he was looking at some sort of god-made flesh. Kagaya couldn't help but cry alongside Euphemia as they held each other in relief and joy. By the Allspark, Fixit was just as awed as everyone. This is TAI reporting in from the Ark. They were immediately contacted by the artificial intelligence. The blast for Horai Island was averted. How? Overjoyed, Fixit accessed the comms to reply. TAI, you won't believe this. Optimus has returned. From the bridge of the Ark, TAI's holographic form looked in shock as the recovering humans and bots present were just as surprised to hear that. But that surprise soon turned into joy. Awesome. Yukiya pumped his fist. Yes. Sideswipe shared a high five with the laughing Ryo. Booyah. Grindcore pulled Strongarm into a hug. Is he really back? The emotional Ayano looked toward the screen as TAI was able to restore visual feed and show everyone the image of the airborne Optimus making his way up towards Damocles. Layla wasted no time leaping into Akito's arms in joy as she cried, and he didn't hesitate to return the embrace himself with a happy smile of his own. The Ark appeared to be heavily damaged from the blast, despite the doubling of the shield's power, but it was still in one piece even as it laid in the ocean's water. Omega Supreme had slowly stood back up and saw the flying Optimus as well. He too smiled at the sight of him. With the Star Saber in hand, and as he flown closer, Optimus had spun his body and the glowing sword while airborne before swinging the Star Saber outward to send a powerful energy wave straight towards the Damocles station. The second it impacted the shields, they were shattered, causing the entire station to rock, shaking up every part of it, including the top where Lelouch and his team all were, briefly interrupting their battle with Megatron. Inside, Smokescreen and Windblade were knocked off their feet, as were Soundwave and his mini-cons. Smokescreen happened to spot the shield generator beginning to overload. Some kind of energy feedback caused the tubes of energy to surge out of control as electricity sparked out from the power core itself. Soundwave had briefly turned his attention towards it, and that left an opening. With a mighty yell, Smokescreen charged forward, slammed his arm into Soundwave and pushed him into the overloading power core right as he activated his phase shifter and phased through the overloaded device and out on the other side. He even fired at it for good measure. Soundwave had ejected Laserbeak just in time as the generator exploded, sending Soundwave flying and crashing in a heap across the ground. Soundwave! Rumble exclaimed in shock, and this shock had left him open for Windblade to bring one of her blades down onto him. He tried to defend himself with his pistons, only to get crushed underneath Windblade's strike, ending the mini-con. Ravage snarled at her and was ready to fight back, but a chirp from Laserbeak drew its attention. The remaining two mini-cons made eye contact before running off and disappearing into two cable holes in the wall and ceiling respectively. Windblade gave an impressed whistle. Nice move there. She complimented Smokescreen. Thanks, but what about him? He gestured to the unresponsive Soundwave, which Windblade scanned with a handheld device. Still alive, but he's out. Let's take him with us. She and Smokescreen hauled up the defeated Decepticon. Khan's surveillance chief has gotta have all kinds of juicy info. Smokescreen smirked along with Windblade before he accessed his comms. Hey, our job is done. We need a ground bridge. A portal opened in front of them, allowing the two to enter and leave the station with their captive. What was that? Rai questioned as the shaking stopped. They would all soon get their answer as they saw the flying form of Optimus appear from below and hover above them all. The minute they all saw him, everything stopped. RC, Colin, Bulkhead, and Rai all looked in clear shock as their eyes had widened, with Colin feeling her eyes water. Bumblebee and Alita seemed just as shocked at first before they both found themselves smiling, something Suzaku did as well before glancing back towards his co-pilot and friend. Lelouch's eyes wavered and had become almost like circles as his mouth had formed into a perfect O. Optimus. Of course, none were more shocked than Megatron as he had seen his greatest enemy was now much stronger than before, and that shock is what left him open for Optimus to attack. Megatron, be gone. With a swing of the Star Saber, Optimus had sent an energy wave straight at Megatron, landing a direct hit that exploded on him and created a large and gaping crevice in the courtyard that led deeper into the station. Optimus. RC stuttered. Why you're here. How are you? Bulkhead stuttered as well. I'm afraid there is little time to explain. Optimus said. You have all done well to hold the line, but I can take it from here. Clear the station. You got it. Bumblebee smirked as he answered his comms. We need a ground bridge up here. A portal opened for the group as they proceeded to leave. Optimus, it's good to have you back. Alita said to him before she entered the portal with Bulkhead right beside her. Go to town and tear this place apart. Colin stated as the firestorm entered the portal next with RC and Bumblebee following. All that was left was the Silver King as the cockpit on the chest opened up to reveal the smiling face of Suzaku and the emotional one of Lelouch as they addressed their leader. It's good to have you back, Optimus. Suzaku said honestly before smiling toward his friend as he tried to push back the joyous emotions he felt. Lelouch had nothing to say, but there was nothing for him to say. Optimus simply smiled at the young hero as he gave a single nod, something Lelouch returned before the cockpit closed and the Silver King entered the portal, which closed behind them. Getting serious once more, Optimus flew upwards slightly as he put the sky boom shield away and held the Star Saber in both hands, hanging it up high before swinging downward to send a powerful wave of energy to slice and tear up much of the courtyard in one strike, exposing more of the insides to Damocles, allowing Optimus to fly inside to finish the job. The Predacon had charged at Slug, who was in his Triceratops mode, who had also charged at the beast in response. They clashed their heads together and while the horns did pierce through the Predacon's head slightly, it was only a flesh wound at best and the Predacon quickly hauled up to send Slug flying and crashing to the ground. Grimlock then came to the side to bite down on the Predacon's right shoulder area while Sludge did the same for the left, both still in their respective Dino modes. The Predacon struggled and tried to bite at Grimlock, only for Swoop to fly in via his pterodactyl mode and grab the Predacon's horns to haul the head straight up, the snarling and screaming beast trying hard to escape the Dinobots' grip, but they held firm. Snarl then charged in with his Stegosaurus mode, his spines lighting up with intense energy as he rammed himself into the Predacon's exposed underbelly with explosive force to push it back. The metallic dragon got back up and roared at the 5 Dinobots, who roared at him in response. It would have gone on the attack again, only to get blasted from all directions. Nearly all the Autobots and Black Knights had arrived to provide aid for their Dinobot companions. Ironhide, Toto, Ogi, Ultra Magnus, Jetfire, Gino, Anya, Monica, Nonette, Jazz, Warpath, Wheeljack, Tamaki, and Cornelia had come to surround the Predacon from all sides and bombard it with their long-ranged weapons. The others had stayed behind to guard the prisoners. Even Alice and all her friends joined in to surround and pound the Predacon with whatever long-ranged weapons they had. Keep your distance. Don't get too close or that thing will rip you to shreds. Ironhide ordered as he continued to pound with his energon cannons. A ground bridge portal then opened as Bumblebee, Alita, RC, and Bulkhead emerged and joined the others to shoot at the pinned Predacon while the Silver King and Firestorm flew upward, their respective energy wings glowing brightly before raining down bolts of energy onto the metallic beast, covering it in an explosive inferno. All bots and nightmares stood back slightly as they saw the resulting smoke slowly began to clear, revealing the Predacon was still alive, albeit greatly injured as it appeared to be bleeding energon on various parts of its body. "You're kidding, just how much punishment can that thing take?" Colin questioned. The Predacon stood defensively and growled at the surrounding enemies. However, its sensors picked up a beacon that drew its attention towards the besieged Damocles. Its own predatory eyes picked up a few vessels flying away from the station. This included the jet modes of Thundercracker and Slipstream, the Thanatos, Skybite's Shark mode, and a small ship that was flown by Shockwave with Steeljaw inside. Picking up on its creator's signal, the Predacon took to the skies and flew away. "It's running away," Ogi stated. "Should we pursue?" Toto questioned. "No. We can't afford to abandon our base or the prisoners." Ultra Magnus replied. "We'll deal with it later." While Lelouch did silently agree with Ultra Magnus, he couldn't help but look with seriousness at the fleeing Predacon. It took the combined might of most of his heavy hitters, as well as Grimlock's whole team, to push it back. No doubt that beast was going to be trouble for them from this point forward. Multiple explosions erupted from within Damocles, followed by waves of energy that were blasted outward from every direction. Optimus Prime had hovered within the devastated insides of Damocles, already destroyed the power core that provided the energy needed to keep it afloat, its remains falling down from all around him as he swung the Star Saber to his right to send a wave to cleave through more of it before swinging it downward and flying in the same direction, clearing the way for himself as he pointed the Star Saber forward, its tip glowing brightly and increased the speed of his descent. A surge of energy formed at the tip of the mighty blade before it spread upward around Optimus, almost akin to a glowing meteor at the speed of a missile. Optimus barreled through the bottom of Damocles before blasting his way from the center point of the 4 fusion cannons at the bottom of the station. A large explosion rocked that whole area and spread to the cannons as they exploded too and broke apart, their remains falling from the besieged station. Optimus then drew the Sky Boom shield as Damocles broke apart even more from the explosions and proceeded to fall. The Sky Boom shield activated to project a large barrier to not only protect Optimus himself, but even cause the largest pieces of the station to fall away from Horai Island and avoid crushing anybody below. All the Autobots and Black Knights, including those in the control room, as well as captive Decepticons, watched as they saw Damocles break apart and its remains fall toward the ocean. Among those watching included Nunnally, Ratchet, Perceptor, Shirley, Nina, Cecile, Millie, Rivals, and even the amnesiac Sarah, all of whom stood atop a building and watched Damocles fall with relief and pride. "Now that's a sight I won't soon forget," Millie said with a smile. "Wish we had popcorn," Rivals commented. Nunnally smiled emotionally, happy to know that it all worked out. She felt Shirley wrap an arm around her shoulder and pulled her in close. They both gazed up towards Ratchet, who merely smiled towards the two of them. Nunnally then turned towards Sarah and offered the immortal her hand, which Sarah slowly took with a smile of her own. Sometime later, after all the captured Decepticons were properly secured, the unmasked Zero stood at the edge of the stage where the UFN Charter was recently ratified, and standing beside him was the newly upgraded form of Optimus Prime. They both looked outward to see the entirety of the Black Knight Autobot alliance that had gathered together. Bumblebee, Ogi, Colin, RC, Suzaku, Bulkhead, Rai, Ironhide, Tamaki, Wheeljack, Toto, Chiba, Ratchet, Fix-It, Alita 1, Euphemia, Cornelia, Lloyd, Rakshata, Cecile, Geass, Undertone, Chigusa, Ultra Magnus, Guilford, Jetfire, K-Gaia, Windblade, Smokescreen, Layla, Akito, Sideswipe, Ryo, Grindcore, Yukia, Strongarm, Ayano, Anna, Claus, Sophie, Ashley, Jean, Shink, Tianzi, Joe, Perceptor, Diathard, Warpath, Drift, Safeguard, Jetstorm, Oigros, Orpheus, Uldren, Maribel, Sokia, Gino, Monica, Nonette, Anya, Jeremiah, Sayoko, and even the holographic form of Tai, they had all stood together as one, and even Steve stood among them. Grimlock stood off to the side, with Alice, Swoop, Dalk, Snarl, Lucretia, Sludge, Sancha, Slug, and Misty. On the far side of the stage were Shirley, Rivals, Millie, and Nina, with the amnesiac Sarah, still somewhat nervous, hiding behind them. Even Omega Supreme was present, standing all the way at the back due to his enormous size. "You, All of you, Lelouch began, have shown what it truly means to be a knight, regardless of your origin. To stand for a cause that's bigger than just yourself. Our backs were against the wall, facing overwhelming evil, and yet you all stood your ground, laying down your lives for each other and those who couldn't defend themselves. The world will know of your selfless heroism. But while we have indeed won a great victory, the war is not over. But I am truly honored that I get to see to its end, fighting alongside each and every one of you. He stood straight and raised his fist. Till all are one. Till all are one. They all called out together, raising their fists with their leader. Steve hesitated for a moment, happening to cast a glance at Cornelia, who gave him a smile and a nod, before he too raised his fist into the air. Till all are one. Lelouch then turned towards Optimus with a smile, who in turn smiled towards him as well as he gave a simple nod. Optimus Prime, Omega Supreme is reporting for duty. The giant Autobot spoke out. And he's not the only one. Swoop stepped forward with Sludge, Snarl, and Slug, with Grimlock being behind his team. Grimlock gave us the gist and you can count on us to join the fight. Welcome to Earth, Omega Supreme, Lightning Strike Collation Force, Optimus began. Call us Dinobots. Grimlock interrupted. It stuck. He said mostly towards Swoop as he was the one who came up with the name, and he couldn't help but give a trollish grin in response. Very well. Optimus smiled. Welcome to Earth, Dinobots. And, to the Autobot Black Knight Alliance. Okay, if nobody else is gonna say it, I will. Tamaki stepped forward. Optimus 2.0 is flipping awesome. A grin formed on his face. Now if only we could fix up your bod. He joked towards Ratchet, who scoffed in annoyance. Is it true? Ultra Magnus asked. The Forge of Solus Prime has been drained of its power. It has. Perceptor confirmed. Then any hope of repairing Cybertron's core has truly been lost. Ultra Magnus said. I'm sorry, Nunnally apologized. I couldn't. I assume full responsibility. Ratchet stepped forward. No, we were all responsible. Shirley said. We all took part in it. And I believe I speak for everyone when I say that we are glad you did. Ultra Magnus said with a smile. Despite our best efforts, we couldn't have won that battle. By restoring Optimus, you gave us the advantage we needed to emerge victorious. Now we have a chance to win this war. Even if it is too late for Cybertron, it is not too late for Earth. And honestly, any one of us would have done the same in a heartbeat. Ogie agreed. So great job, all of you. Ratchet and Perceptor nodded while Nunnally, Shirley, Rivals, Millie, and Nina all exchanged smiles with each other. Even Lloyd gave Cecile something of a friendly nudge to the side, earning a smile from her. Lelouch then stepped towards the group, offering his sister a hand with a smile of his own. The look in his eyes showed just how grateful he was to her for the choice she made, not only in helping to save everyone on Horai Island, but Optimus as well. Nunnally accepted her brother's hand before she turned around towards Sarah as they both offered her their free hands with encouraging smiles. Sarah then smiled back as she accepted their hands, and they all joined the ensuing celebration. Megatron's optics slowly opened as he stood up from the hard ground he had been laying on. A brief glance at his surroundings told him he was in front of the artificial thought elevator that laid hidden beneath Darkmount. You have awoken. Shockwave stepped out from the shadows. Even after a direct hit from the Star Saber, your body was still able to regenerate. It would seem that your code has made you truly immortal, Lord Megatron. It would seem that way. Megatron glanced to his palm to see the code emblem. And Damocles. Completely destroyed. The battle was lost. Shockwave revealed, causing Megatron to grunt in frustration. However, a number of our forces were captured, with Soundwave being among them. That caught Megatron's attention. Is that so? He looked more curious than upset at that. And what of his mini-cons? Rumble was terminated in the battle. Although, Ravage and Laserbeak are still online, and are awaiting their controller's command within the vicinity of Horai Island. Shockwave answered. A sinister grin fell on Megatron's face. Then all is not lost. He glanced towards the artificial thought elevator. Neo Ragnarok has only been delayed. They may have won the battle, but the war still be mine. The calm before the storm. Optimus Prime stood outside at Horai Island along with Diethard, Lloyd, Cecile, Rakshata, and Fixit. In his new body as a large vehicle was rolled up towards him. This vehicle was larger than any normal truck and had the appearance and equipment akin to military. The vehicle came to a stop as Claus stepped out from the driver's seat. "Hey big guy," Claus greeted. "What you're looking at here is an experimental anti-nightmare vehicle that was in development at the EU a little bit before the fall of Britannia. It's an all-terrain with heavy armor for shielding, Sakuradite-powered boosters for extra speed, and whole lot of guns, especially missiles. With the right pilot, this bad boy could take down a whole squad of nightmares. It might even give the Lancelot a run for its money." "Oh, care to put that money where your mouth is, Claus?" Lloyd asked in a challenging tone. Now, there's no need for that." Cecile quickly stepped in front. "Thank you, Claus. This will most certainly do," Optimus said as his optics shined down on the experimental vehicle, scanning and acquiring it for his new vehicle mode. He then transformed, taking a near-identical appearance to the vehicle that was brought for him, save for the red and blue color scheme, and then transformed back to normal. "Though I do have to wonder, if this vehicle was built specifically to counter nightmares, why hasn't it been seen till recently?" Cecile asked. "Well, it was apparently still in the experimental stages," Claus answered. "That and since its main fuel was Sakuradite, otherwise known as Energon. And Britannia having control over most of the planet's richer Energon deposits, it didn't have enough literal fuel to get off the ground." Rakshata put two and two together. "But now things are changing," Diethard said. "With Britannia gone and a majority of the Decepticon forces pushed back, we've gained pretty much support over the entire world. We've also supplied the EU manufacturers with the synthetic Energon formula." Fixit added. "Already they have over 100 vehicles being constructed as we speak and should have plenty more by day's end. With the fate of the world at stake, it makes sense they're devoting all their manpower to everything military," Lloyd said. "Though I can't imagine a lot of them will be particularly happy about having to dump all these since every member nation of the UFN agreed to abandon all military power once the Decepticons are finished. Then again, with Megatron backed into the corner, he'll be pulling out all the stops too. So, I don't see a whole lot of these things surviving either." Rakshata added. "Where is Lelouch?" Optimus asked. "He along with Nunnally, Euphemia, Cornelia, and Maribel went to talk with Odysseus and the other former Britannian royals that had escaped from Schneisel," Diethard answered. "Oh boy, that's gotta be one awkward family reunion," Lloyd commented with a slight laugh. Lelouch, Nunnally, and their half-sisters currently sat in a guest's quarters that had been arranged for Odysseus, Karini, and Layla, as they told them the whole story. Lelouch becoming Zero, why he killed Clovis, the existence of Geass, the arrival of the Autobots and Decepticons on Earth with the latter being responsible for Charles's rise to power, as well as his own desire for all the thought elevators, including Ragnarok, which led to the truth behind Maribel's family and her whole story, with the existence of VV being revealed, as well as his current fate. Needless to say, it was quite a lot to cover. Though none of them said anything about Rai and his own family history, mostly because Rai asked not to tell them, not that it was a big secret or anything, he just felt it was unnecessary since he had no attachment to his Britannian identity any longer, and if they were to learn, he would be the one to tell them, which Lelouch and the others all respected. There was also no reason to mention Marianne being alive and inside Anya as basically a ghost, at least for the moment. Odysseus, Layla, and Karini sat in silence when it was all done, processing everything that was told to them. Wow, I honestly don't know what to say to all of that," Odysseus commented. "We don't really expect you to," Cornelia replied. "We understand it's quite a lot to take in," Euphemia said. "I myself had a hard time processing it all when I was told," Maribel added. "A hard time processing, you say? That's the understatement of the century," Karini stated. "An ancient power, alien gods, our father looking to gain all that for himself. The whole reason Britannia even advanced as far as it did was just to gain access to the thought elevators so he can use their power and remake humanity in his own image," Lelouch confirmed. "And that's part of the reason you killed Clovis?" Layla asked, with Nunnally and Euphemia looking to her with concern. Clovis was indeed her full brother and they had a rather good relationship on the surface, so it was natural that she'd feel distraught over everything. He may not have known exactly what the thought elevators were, but he still intended to use that power for himself. And he killed a lot of people to cover it all up. Lelouch replied. Though if I'm being honest, I probably did it for the sake of spite for what the rest of my family did to me in Nunnally. But even without that considered, if I were put in that same scenario, I'd do it again without hesitation. I'm sorry that I hurt you, Layla, but I don't regret killing Clovis. Layla offered no response. The logical part of her understood as Clovis did kill a lot of innocent people in his own personal quest to seize the throne, nor could she blame Lelouch for resenting their family, but she was still hurt by the betrayal of both brothers. Euphemia wanted to walk over and comfort her, but Cornelia kept a hand on her shoulder and simply shook her head saying that now was not the time. So, what's going to happen now? Odysseus asked. Given all that's occurred recently, it's safe to say that Britannia is gone with the wind. I honestly doubt any of you want to restart at all. The time has come for things to change. Mary Bell responded immediately. Yes, once the threat of the Decepticons is over, we plan to rebuild the world and create a new society where nobody is oppressed. Cornelia added. That sounds like a lot of work. Karini said. Even if Britannia is gone and the world is united against the Decepticons, some people will still want power for themselves. Britannia didn't have all the world's corruption. No, it didn't, Nunnally replied. Believe me, we've all seen that all over the world. But we've also seen hope too. Hope for a better tomorrow, and that is something worth fighting for. Nunnally said with a gentle smile and a fiery expression in her eyes. Odysseus couldn't help but smile. You know Nunnally, you've really grown up. The last time we saw you, you were just a little girl, blind and confined to a wheelchair. Now look at you, I'd say you have the same kind of fire in your eyes as your brother. Nunnally smiled at that. Same goes for the rest of you, Cornelia, you've always had something of a fire in you, and there's still one there, but now, I don't know how to say it, but that fire feels different. I'd like to think it's because I'm different. Cornelia said with a smile of her own. Being with these people helped me to see things a tad bit differently. Now I'm part of a cause that's truly just. There's a whole lot of work ahead of us. Mary Bell said as well. But, we're all that's really left of our family. Maybe it could be the start of something new for all of us. Where we're not watching over each other's shoulders and expecting to be backstabbed by our own siblings. Karini gave something of a playful scoff. What, you want us all living together? Sitting down at a family dinner and making idle chit-chat? Yeah, why not? Yuffie replied with a smile herself. It's not the worst idea. Lelouch admitted. So long as you don't mind me inviting others I consider family, including a few Autobots. I thought Cybertronians don't eat. Odysseus couldn't stop himself from joking, earning some chuckles from everyone, even a small smile crossed Lila's face. But seriously, if there's anything we can do to help. We appreciate that, thank you, Nunnally smiled. But, just leave it all to us. We are going to win this war. And we will make this world a better place. Count on it. Cornelia said as she reached over to hold Nunnally's right hand with Yuffie doing the same with her left, who grasped Marybell's with her free hand before Cornelia reached out towards Lelouch and grasped his hand, which he took without hesitation. He then offered Odysseus his free hand with an encouraging smile. Though surprised by the gesture, Odysseus took Lelouch's hand before offering his free one to Karini, who took his before grasping Lila's. She then looked over towards Marybell as she also offered her free hand to complete the chain, though slightly hesitant at first. One look in Marybell's eyes, which seemed like a mixture of hope and a firm resolve, appeared to be enough for Layla to reach out and take it. After parting ways with their siblings, Lelouch, Nunnally, Cornelia, Euphemia, and Marybell happened to come across the group that consisted of Optimus, Shirley, Ratchet, Rivals, Perceptor, Millie, Smokescreen, Nina, and Cecile. The minute Cornelia saw Optimus, she stopped herself from balking in awe. I'm still not used to this new form of yours, Optimus. Though I'll admit, it's very robust. Yuffie commented with a smile. But no matter what form you take, you're just as heroic as ever. Thank you. Optimus nodded. Is it alright if the rest of us have a moment with Lelouch and Nunnally? Lelouch suppressed his own grimace, while Nunnally looked towards him with concern and a sinking feeling of her own. Both of them had a sneaking suspicion what they wanted to talk about. Of course. Marybell nodded as she and her sisters left, though Yuffie gave a friendly smile and nod to the former student council members, who did the same with her as well before parting ways. Once they were gone, it became awkwardly silent for the whole group, most of whom had no idea what to say for the first few seconds until a certain rookie spoke up. So, about what happened recently, Smokescreen couldn't quite find the right words to say and had hoped this would be enough to get the conversation started. Did any of you tell anyone about what had happened? Lelouch questioned immediately. Or rather what almost happened. You mean how you were given mater, ow. Shirley stomped on Rivals's foot. What? We're all thinking it. No, we haven't told anybody, Lulu. The brunette assured him. We didn't tell Colin, Suzaku, Bumblebee, I didn't even tell Rai about it. Not even Asplund. Lelouch glanced towards Cecile. Are you kidding? She replied. You'd know he'd have a field day with something like that. What about Sarah? Nunnally asked. I don't think she really understands any of it, her having amnesia and all. Nina answered. But we did have a talk with her before about keeping this quiet and she said she wouldn't say anything. We can't just drop what had happened as if we were casually carrying on a conversation. Ratchet stated. One of the most important relics in Cybertronian history. But just as so, we can't exactly ignore it either. Perceptor said. How would it even be possible? Lelouch asked Optimus specifically. I'm not a Cybertronian, nor am I prime material. I do not fully understand the implications of you wielding that matrix, Lelouch. The Prime responded. As for how and why you are worthy, it is because you rejected the power. I don't understand, Lelouch said, looking confused. Megatron tore Cybertron apart to claim the matrix for himself, but he could never find it. Optimus explained. Because the matrix of leadership is not found, it is earned. To wield the power of the primes, one must possess one who carries a worthy spark. As said, I don't fully understand the implications, but ever since we have met, I have watched you struggle, and I have watched you grow. At first, you were distrusting of all around you, even desired to use others for your own personal agenda. But you have since transformed into someone who truly believes in the ideals that Zero had preached. You may not be Cybertronian, but you have developed a spark that is all your own, and I do not mean your Geass. I can't even remember the last time you even used that. Millie added. And you pretty much used to use it all the time back when we're in Japan. Lelouch then looked away slightly. The only reason I accepted Chera's contract back then was because I thought was going to die, and I did the only thing that might possibly save me. But given who I was back then, if I had been offered the Matrix, I would have taken it in less than a second. And yet when it was offered, you rejected it. Optimus told him. Because you do not actively seek power. Strength and power are not the same, Lelouch, and that is why Megatron could never wield the Matrix even if he held it in his hands. But you refused the Matrix because doing so would lead to my death. You rejected power to preserve the life of someone else. That alone makes you more worthy of being a prime than you know. Because you're the closest thing to a father to me. Lelouch said right away. I'm sorry if that sounds selfish, but it's not selfish, Lelouch. Nunnally said immediately as she grasped his hand. It's love. Just as power and strength aren't the same, neither are love and selfishness. Got that right, Shirley agreed. Any one of us would have done the exact same if we were in your position, Lelouch. I wouldn't exactly say, love, myself, but I'd throw my spark down for not only Optimus, but everyone here, bot or human. Smokescreen added. There's nothing I wouldn't do for you guys. The same goes for the rest of us. Millie said, speaking for everyone. Wielding some fancy god alien magic sounds cool and all, but not if it means someone we care about has to die. Optimus is the one spark I value most, Ratchet said. And that's not to say I devalue the lives of everyone here, I myself would lay down my life. But, Optimus is right about you, Lelouch. I've seen you grow myself, and as I look at you now, I see a lot of him inside you. There are plenty of differences for sure, your personal ego being one of them. Ratchet put in, earning a slight glare from Lelouch. But you do carry the same courage and valor. Wow, a genuine compliment from Ratchet of all people. Rivals said before looking to his friend. But if he says you're prime material, then you know it's gotta be true. I don't know what to say. Lelouch truly felt humbled by all of this. The praise from those whom he considered to be among his closest friends and family who all felt he was indeed worthy, as well as their support in his choice to reject the Matrix. It left him more humbled than he'd ever been before. I still don't want it though. Even if Optimus' life is no longer in danger, I don't want it. I understand. Optimus accepted with a smile. But when you feel you are ready, Lelouch, the Matrix will find itself in the hands of a worthy wielder. Lelouch smiled. Thank you. And Nunnally, Optimus got the girl's attention. I never did get a chance to say this before, but thank you for saving my life. Nunnally herself looked up towards him with an emotional smile. You're welcome. Thank you for being a part of my life. The Autobot veteran known as Ironhide stood outside, staring out into the open sea with an unusual look on his face. It was one of grief. While he was grateful, they had won the battle and that Optimus had recovered, coming back stronger than ever. Many were still lost to get to this point, many of the bots and people that he had come to know and befriend, but there was one in particular that made him feel all the more mournful. Hey, Ironhide turned slightly to see Ogi walking up to join him. Chigusa was present as well, but she stayed a bit behind as the man approached the black-clad Autobot. You look like you could use some company. Ironhide gave a single nod and a grunt in acknowledgement, allowing Ogi to walk up and join him as they gazed out into the ocean. One hell of a view. Ogi said. Yeah, Ironhide agreed. Ogi gave a small sigh as he looked towards the old bot with a sympathetic expression. I'm really sorry about Chromia. It's war, Ironhide admitted. Things like that are going to happen. So, we keep telling ourselves, but when it does, we're still not ready for it. Ogi replied. I know it's not exactly the same, but Naoto was my best friend growing up. I knew him since we were kids. When we started stealing from Britannia for the people in the ghettos, we all knew the risks. I was scared for sure that we'd get caught and executed. I always had that sinking feeling whenever we did all that stuff, and then it actually happened, to my best friend. I've seen it probably over 100 times. Ironhide began. To many good bots that I knew, my friends, a part of me felt I'd be used to it. When I lost contact with her after Cybertron went dark, I'd hoped she was still out there, but a part of me was also expecting that she didn't make it. And then she came, he smiled. With Geass, Magnus, and everyone. She actually survived. Well, she was a wrecker, and we all know how tough they are. Ogi joked slightly, earning a chuckle from Ironhide, but that levity died out quickly. I know I said it, but I really am sorry. Everyone here has lost someone close, you know you're not alone in this. I know I'm not. Doesn't make it hurt any less. Ironhide said. Isn't that good though? Ogi asked. If you're numb to that sort of thing, I think it's a sign you're losing touch with yourself. Look, the point is, Chromia might be gone, but you still got the rest of us watching your back. So, let's keep going for her and everyone else, and show that what happened to them wasn't for nothing. Deal. He offered his fist for a fist bump. Ironhide turned to Ogi to see his fist. A smile formed on his face as well. Deal. He gently bumped his large metallic fist against Ogi's fleshy one. Look at me getting a pep talk from a kid. He joked. Who are you calling a kid, old-timer? Ogi joked back. As they shared a laugh, Chigusa not only giggled herself but even smiled at their camaraderie. It really was amazing, no matter how much these people get beaten down, they always find a way to climb back up. Though she would regret being one of those that ended up kicking them down in the past, she was proud that she was now by their side to help them stand back up and take back what was stolen from them, especially Ogi. Never once could she imagine herself falling in love with someone like him, and yet, that's exactly what happened, and she couldn't be happier. So, you're the famous Dinobots, Sancha asked as she and the rest of the irregulars, including Misty and even Nunnally, all sat alongside Grimlock and his team on the outside of Horai Island. The genuine articles, and don't let anybody tell you different. Swoop said proudly while Slug chuckled. Snarl gave a simple smile, but Sludge just remained neutral. I do have one question I have to ask, why was your old team name, Lightning Strike Coalition Force? Dalk asked. Kinda feels like a bit of a mouthful. And where does the lightning part come in? None of you seem pretty fast, except for Swoop, Lucretia added. Did you have electrical weapons or something? It was this guy's idea. Slug gestured to Grimlock, much to the girl's surprise, while Grimlock just looked embarrassed. You never said that, Alice said in surprise. You never asked, Grimlock commented. Alice was even more surprised when she heard the tone in Grimlock's, wait, are you embarrassed? He kept his back to them and only gave a grumble, before Alice busted out in laughter, followed by Sancha, Dalk, and Lucretia. Really? It was his idea? Dalk asked Sludge in between laughs. It was. Sludge confirmed dryly. It seemed like a good idea at the time. Grimlock commented. Sure, whatever you say, big guy. Lucretia tried to suppress her laughs. I don't understand. How is this funny? Misty asked Nunnally. I'll try and explain later. Nunnally replied. You can't explain when something's funny, kid. Swoop said. If you do, it's not funny anymore. But, I don't understand how it is funny. Misty responded. Humors is on deaf ears with this one, huh? Snarl commented. She still has a lot to learn, but she's getting there. Alice said. Wanting to change the subject, Grimlock turned towards Sludge. I thought you didn't make it out of the tunnels. How are you here, Sludge? Sludge turned towards his leader with a glare and said nothing before giving his response. I was forced into stasis lock. A couple of Autobots pulled me out of the tunnels, but they couldn't get me back online. After Shockwave's tower blew up, we found Sludge and brought him to the lab to try and fix him up. Snarl added. The only way to do that though, was to use the same kind of programming that Shockwave did with us to turn us into what we are. It gave him his new alt mode while also repairing all the damage done to him. After that, we wandered around Cybertron for a bit. Slug spoke. We happened to run into Omega Supreme, who was also in stasis lock. Apparently, he defended Yakin during Megatron's biggest assault and was put out of commission courtesy of Dark Energon. Nasty stuff. Swoop shivered. So, we started fixing him up around the time we got Optimus' message. When he was all ready to go, we flew straight to this mudball. Right in the nick of time too, you helped save everyone. Dalk said excitedly. Yes, thank you for all your help. Nunnally smiled gratefully. Megatron is backed into a corner. We have a shot at ending this war. Grimlock stated as he stood up to look at his team. Let's end it together. You even need to ask, big guy. Swoop asked as he stood up. Of course, we're in. Dinobots gotta stick together. We're just as much Autobots as everyone else. Snarl stood up next. We got a job to do. And we'll find Shockwave and make him pay for what he did to us and so many others. Slug also stood up. You won't have to do it alone though. Alice stood up with Sancha, Lucretia, and Dalk. All of us experiments are in this together. She offered her hand to Nunnally, who took it as she stood up alongside Misty. For one of the few times in his life, Grimlock felt happy. His team was back together. Not only that, they seemed to be getting along quite well with the other team that he had made here. Well, all except Sludge, who had yet to stand up. Sludge, the last Dinobot, couldn't help but feel some form of resentment as he was more or less abandoned back on Cybertron. But then again, it wasn't Grimlock's fault that he got zapped to another planet when Shockwave's Spacebridge tower exploded in his face, literally. Not to mention the hell that the rest of their team endured. The logical part of him understood all that, but there was another part that still felt angry. Well, at the very least, he knew where to aim that anger, at Shockwave and every Decepticon that protected him. I'm in. Sludge stood up. Knockout sat against the wall in one of several prison cells made specifically for Decepticons. It was a cubic room with the only non-wall being a holographic shield that also served as a window of sorts for the hallway in front of him. And he wasn't the only one. Erazor and Divebomb were in one of the cells next to him, with the other captured Viacons in the same situation. After having been brought in, he was questioned by Zero, though he didn't remember much of the interrogation itself, likely a result of that Geass thing he heard about. Now he just sat and looked more bored than anything else. All that dust can't be good for your finish. He turned to his side to see Bumblebee looking at him with something of a trolling grin, with Suzaku, Lloyd, Cecile, and Gino being present as well. But it's probably better than what the kids did to you back in France, huh? Well, look who got his pipes back. Knockout commented. He then noticed Suzaku's presence as well as that of the other humans. Huh, the gang's all here. Nice to see you too, Knockout. Lloyd said casually. So, what are you doing here? Pretty sure Zero got what he needed out of me, it's not like I got anything left to give. Knockout said. Well, I for one would like to know why you were a Decepticon in the first place. Suzaku asked, earning a raised eyebrow from the red-clad Cybertronian. Why? Hoping to reform me or something? He replied somewhat skeptically. We got a few former cons with us. Gino said. And honestly, back when we were working together in Britannia, you seemed like the nicest con out there. At least compared to whack jobs like Arachnid or Megatron, or even a condescending jerk like Starscream. Though there is some condescending there on your part, too. Cecile added. Knockout shrugged. I just sided with the winning team. That's it. Suzaku narrowed his eyes. The winning team. What do you want from me, Kururugi? Knockout began. Some kind of tragic origin story. Megatron forced me to work for him. Was I enthralled by his charisma? Okay, maybe a little bit on that last one. But in all honesty, I wasn't really in it for the revolution he preached. But when the war started, I tried to stay out of it. Mostly because I didn't want to ruin my finish. That sounds about right, Cecile commented. But when it started to look like that being neutral wasn't an option and we had to choose sides, I just went with the side that appeared to be winning, mostly so I could survive. The red-clad Decepticon noticed to glares from Suzaku and even Gino. Go ahead, call me a coward like Starscream, but when your whole planet becomes a war zone and you really only have yourself to looking out for, you gotta play smart. Even though Megatron poisoned your own home. Suzaku kept up his glare. That honestly came out of nowhere. I didn't think things would go to that kind of extreme. Knockout replied. You said you were only looking out for yourself. But what about your partner? Breakdown. Gino asked. Wasn't he your friend? I didn't meet Breakdown till after I joined up with the cons. He apparently joined before me and he was a bit more loyal to Megatron than I was. Knockout answered. Though I'll admit, I did take a liking to the big lug. Enough so that you'll probably want to go on a murder spree to avenge your fallen comrade if you're out of your cell. Lloyd asked in his usual sociopathic tone. Meh, revenge is overrated. Knockout shrugged. Don't expect me to be all buddy-buddy with the guy who did him in, but I ain't gonna pick a fight I know I can't win. Gino looked towards Suzaku with a knowing expression in his eyes. Though Suzaku didn't exactly like what the former Knight of Three was implying as he did pitch the idea, it wouldn't be right of them to not extend the invitation. They have done so with plenty of people in the past. Hey Knockout, since being a con hasn't exactly done you any favors, how about you switch over to our side? Gino offered. Knockout sighed again. There it is. The chance to reform. Hey, like I said, we have a few former cons here. And you seem like a decent enough guy. Gino insisted. Megatron also left you for dead and would have killed you and everyone else with Damocles. Suzaku added. Even if you're not interested in revenge, you have to know that he's out of control and has to be stopped. If you won't do it for us, at least help to save yourself. Cecile said as well. And if that's not enough incentive, if you switch over, maybe I can convince Zero to let you and I team up again, and we can work on the Lancelot like old times. Lloyd sung in an alluring manner. That piqued Knockout's interest. Well, I do miss the old days. And I do appreciate how you've taken such good care of it. The Lancelot might not be solely my work, but is a work of art nonetheless. Oh, and that combiner mode for that, where it fuses with Zero's nightmare. That is just beautiful. So, Lloyd offered his hand with his usual sociopathic smile. Sociopath partners again. Knockout chuckled. Well, I believe the phrase you humans say is, oh what the hell. If you can't beat M, join M, right? Alright, you got me. Meanwhile, Optimus and Lelouch had gathered together at the bridge of the Ark along with several others including Euphemia, Wizard, Alita, Ogi, Ironhide, Toto, Ultra Magnus, Layla, Kagaya, Shink, Jeremiah, and even the former Viacon, Steve. And it would seem that Steve had undergone a paint job. No longer was he clad in dark purple, but rather a blue, and his Decepticon insignia had been replaced with a red Autobot emblem, showing the change in his affiliation. TAI, how is progress on the Ark's restoration? Optimus asked. So far, so good, Optimus. The holographic girl appeared before them. Most of the main systems are back online, though the shields took major damage. I wouldn't quite say it's ready to go into combat yet. Though Omega Supreme has been of great help in providing his own schematics for me to help divert power. Good. Lelouch nodded. Let us know when it's ready. We need to be up as soon as possible. You sound as if you're in a bit of a rush, Lelouch. Kagaya told him. We won that fight, but Megatron is still out there. The young revolutionary said. And even if he is backed into a corner, that probably makes him all the more dangerous. I agree with Zero. Ultra Magnus said. We can't let our guard down, especially with the revelation that Megatron now has a Predacon at his disposal. Predacon? Are you referring to that dragon beast? Layla asked. The Predacons were a race of prehistoric Cybertronian beasts. Alita explained. Based on our historical texts, they were among the first to emerge from the Well of All Sparks following the original 13, but they were rendered extinct by a cataclysm that almost rendered our planet uninhabitable. But following that, other Cybertronians, which became our ancestors, would rise. So, they're like Earth's dinosaurs, Ogi deduced. But wait, if they're supposed to be extinct, how did Megatron get one? Shockwave probably cloned it, Ironhide assumed. If that's true, can we assume that Megatron has other Predacons at his disposal? Wizard asked. I don't think so. Steve shook his head. If he did, he probably would have sicked them all on us with Damocles. And with Shockwave's primary focus being on the study of Geass, I do not believe he would have the means or resources to clone additional Predacons. Optimus added. That's honestly a relief, Euphemia said. Just that one beast overpowered Grimlock and Alice's whole team. It took the combined efforts of all the Dinobots to push it back, and even then everyone else had to join in just to force it into retreating. I can't imagine an army of those monsters. This Predacon is a serious issue, and I am also glad Megatron also doesn't have more. Lelouch granted. But I'm a little more concerned about the fact that he's not only immortal, but we still have no clue how he escaped from that dimensional confinement we put him in. We had destroyed all the thought elevators, or so we believed. Shink said before looking toward Jeremiah. Wasn't there also one beneath Pendragon? There was, directly under the royal palace even. Jeremiah confirmed. But I can confirm that it was destroyed when the Decepticons invaded and killed the Emperor. Since Shockwave's primary focus has been to the study of Geass, is it possible for him to recreate the thought elevators? Layla asked. Perhaps he made one of his own. Given that Cybertronians can create portal-like devices themselves. Perhaps they were able to create a ground bridge device that leads directly to this, Sword of Akasha. Toto assumed. Has Sarah regained her memories, Lelouch? No. He shook his head. But if Shockwave was somehow able to recreate a thought elevator, then Ragnarok could still be a threat. Fortunately, we have a Decepticon in our captivity that can be considered Megatron's right hand, not only that he's also an expert to groundbridge and spacebridge technology. Ultra Magnus said. Then perhaps it is time we begin questioning Soundwave. Optimus stated. However, unbeknownst to everyone else, Anya was just outside of the bridge, standing around the corner. Or rather, it was Marianne in control of their shared body, and they happened to hear everything. He's not wrong. If Megatron was able to escape the sword, then Ragnarok is still a threat, especially since he has VV's code. Anya told her. I know, Marianne muttered. You can't hide this from them anymore. You have to tell him. If you won't tell Lelouch, I will. Anya delivered her ultimatum. You're right, Marianne admitted as the frame of the body she inhabited began to shake with anxiety. After he gets what he needs from Soundwave, I'll tell him the truth. All of it. Darkmount. While the fortress was mostly quiet on the outside, save for the Predacon that remained perched at the top, standing on guard for any enemy attack should the need arise, all the activity took place below, specifically at the artificial thought elevator where Megatron and Shockwave currently were. Soundwave may remain in captivity, Ravage and Laserbeak both remain free. Megatron asked. That is my understanding, Shockwave confirmed. Though I cannot say what exactly is happening over there, it would be logical to assume that Soundwave has already remotely issued his command to the remaining two mini-cons, with their primary focus being to acquire CC and possibly the Dark Star Saber as well. Excellent. Wouldn't you agree? Steeljaw. Megatron asked as he turned around, with the wolf-like Decepticon as well as the Thanatos emerging from around the corner. Please pardon us, Lord Megatron, but I have concerns that need to be addressed. Steeljaw began. Our forces are all but diminished. Even with you bringing back virtually every Decepticon and condensing them to Darkmount, our enemies still outnumber us now that they have united all the humans' military power behind them. With Damocles now rubble, and Soundwave in the enemy's custody, our enemies will seize this opportunity to strike and annihilate us completely. Shin added. And yet, you seem perfectly calm. Megatron only sneered before glancing at Shockwave. Perhaps it is time we let them in our endgame. If that is your wish, Lord Megatron. The Decepticon scientist turned towards the pair. Steeljaw, Shin, step forward. The wolf-like Decepticon and the cyborg that was built into his nightmare approached closer, and when they were close enough, Megatron activated the power within his code. The dark emblem in his palm glowed a dark purple, as did the Geass emblem on the artificial thought elevator before all four vanished in a flash of dark light. They all reappeared in the Sword of Akasha pocket dimension once more, all four standing on the metallic platform as the golden and clouds and sky still remained around them. Steeljaw took a moment to observe his new location with even Shin looking rather intrigued. Where exactly are we? Steeljaw asked. The Sword of Akasha. Megatron began. It was here where the thought elevators converged. I do not know the full extent of your knowledge regarding Geass, Steeljaw. So let me explain what I can to you. Geass is a power that connects directly with one's mind. The thought elevators that preciously stood could be considered the source of that power, a way to connect the minds of those who wield Geass. Charles Z. Britannia and his inner circle believed that by using this power, they could connect to all the minds of every human on the planet. Shockwave explained. By utilizing the power of two codes, one previously wielded by VV now in Megatron's possession, and the other being held by CC, they would be able to enact Ragnarok. This process would allow all of humanity, be they alive or dead, to shed all individuality and merge their minds together, believing it would bring the collective subconscious of all humans into a single being. So, he essentially attempted to fuse himself and his whole race into a single being. Steeljaw summed up. Sounds rather messy and disappointing. Megatron added. To connect to every being of only a single species, confined to this one planet, when it has the potential for so much more. As the code emblem on his palm glowed again, the illusion of the heavenly clouds vanished to reveal a massive metallic megastructure resembling a Dyson sphere. But what stood out the most was a space bridge high above them, facing downward, connected by all the metal pillars on the platform. Is that a space bridge? Steeljaw asked in surprise. Indeed. Shockwave confirmed. The initial process of Ragnarok would have unleashed a form of energy that would spread throughout the planet. However, ever since the discovery of this dimension shortly after Britannia's fall, Dark Energon has been directly infused into the machine that you now stand upon. Dark Energon that I can directly control via the power that has since been infused into me that I have mastered. Megatron continued. And now that I wield a code, this enables me to directly connect to the minds of anyone I wish. Once CC is in our possession, and her code joins with mine, we can activate Ragnarok. But rather than the energy just spreading over Earth and connecting only to human consciousness, it'll enter the Spacebridge portal. And, where does the portal lead? Steeljaw asked, not exactly liking where this is going. Cybertron. Specifically, the Well of All Sparks. Megatron revealed. Horai Island. RC, Colin, Guilford, Jazz, Undertone, and Windblade all stood guarding Holding Cell. Much like the others that the Decepticon prisoners were kept in, it had a holographic shield that served as the only form of transparency inside a cubic cell. The only difference was that this cell was located far away from all the other captive Decepticons. It made sense given that those in command wanted to keep this specific Decepticon as far away from his brethren as possible. Zero contact. The Decepticon in question laid on a confinement table with energy bands on his wrists, arms, legs, ankles, and on his chest, all to restrict any and all movement. Not that made much of a difference. Ever since he had woken up, he had yet to move a muscle. He was as stiff as a statue and hadn't made so much as a sound. Guarding him felt very quiet and eerie for all of them, so much so that they couldn't even find it within themselves to strike up some small talk to end the dreadful silence, and that only made it worse. A sound then came from down the hall, the five looking to see the group consisting of Lelouch, Optimus, Bumblebee, Ultra Magnus, Suzaku, Bulkhead, Rai, Wheeljack, Tamaki, Ironhide, Ogi, Ratchet, Lloyd, Rakshata, Steve, Jeremiah, and Kagaya approaching them. Oh thank God. Colin breathed in relief at seeing everyone come in. Now this dreadful silence can end. Has there been any change? Optimus asked. No, he's not made a move or a sound. RC answered. Yeah, it's really creeping me out. Geass commented. And I'm used to the silent company. He gestured to his mini-con partner for emphasis. We removed the resonance blaster and put that in lock-up, so don't expect any loud performances from him. Windblade informed. You made the right call in capturing this one. Lelouch said to her specifically. What about his mini-cons? Gone. Smokescreen and I took out one, but the other two vanished without a trace. Probably went back to Darkmount. Windblade answered. Lelouch, are you sure about this? Colin asked, feeling a tad bit uneasy. Soundwave is not only the Decepticon surveillance chief, he's also Megatron's right hand. I would be surprised if he didn't have any kind of intel. Lelouch answered. Open it up. Aye, sir. Geass said for the sake of some humor in this otherwise tense situation as he opened the shield, allowing the group to enter the cell to face the captive Decepticon. That was when Soundwave finally made some form of movement. He craned his head slightly to see the company in question. As most of them were already inside, Geass stood by Guilford and Steve before addressing them. You two have worked with him, right? So what can we expect here? Honestly, I have no idea. Guilford confessed. I didn't interact with him all that much. Nearly every Decepticon I've met had their own unique personality with individual quirks. But this one, it's like he's a blank slate. I couldn't read him at all. It was very unnerving. Does he even talk? Geass asked. I'm not sure he even has a face. Steve replied. Meanwhile, outside Horai Island, while most people seemed to be minding their own business, be they civilians just doing whatever to pass the time, or Black Knights on patrol, they failed to notice two figures moving quickly and quietly around them. Ravage moved in between the buildings, sticking close to the shadows and being ever silent like his controller. Having the body akin to a jungle cat made him far more nimble than most other mini-cons, and it seemed he carried the stealthy predator vibe of said jungle cat, being quick and quiet as Laserbeak guided him through the air. The flying mini-con remained high enough to avoid being spotted, and if there was even a glance, one could easily dismiss him as just a bird or something. These two were no ordinary mini-cons, as they were built and designed by Soundwave himself, as opposed to Frenzy and Rumble that were naturally born mini-cons that chose to follow Soundwave. As such, Laserbeak and Ravage could communicate with each other via a binary signal only the two of them shared, providing each other and their master with eyes and ears on the ground and in the sky. Even if Soundwave was unable to contact them, or they him, they still could communicate with one another. Laserbeak scanned the area as he flew and happened to spot one of the buildings that housed a control room for Horai Island. A brief scan of the building indicated that it was connected to the island's communication network, which means surveillance could also likely be accessed. With that knowledge, Laserbeak sent his directive to Ravage, telling him exactly where to go. With just as much swiftness and stealth as before, Ravage made his way closer to the building that Laserbeak directed him. He moved in between all the buildings before climbing up the side of the one he was at before leaping towards the top of another and getting a direct shot to the one that served as his target. Taking a brief scan of the area, he made the jump. Ravage leapt over the gap and reached the rooftop of the control building. Ravage made sure to stick as close to the roof as possible, taking a position akin to pouncing as he crawled towards an antenna near the middle of the roof. Once he was close enough, Laserbeak flew down before landing on his back, hooking his talons onto built-in ports. This allowed the two mini-cons to connect to each other just as Ravage opened his mouth and gently bit into the antenna. With a direct connection, they would soon hack the enemy system and gain access to the island's communications and surveillance systems. Lelouch activated his Geass and looked directly at Soundwave's face. How did Megatron escape the Sword of Akasha? Just as the red sigil appeared in his eyes, Soundwave's faceplate activated as a green sigil that resembled an upside-down Geass emblem appeared, negating the effects before it even touched him. How did Megatron escape the SS Sword of Akasha? Soundwave replayed a remixed recording of Lelouch's voice, causing everyone to look a bit unnerved. Whoa, Zero the remix. Geass commented. He has a Geass canceller. Jeremiah's eyes narrowed. Of course, he does. Ironhide glared. A smiling emoji face then appeared on Soundwave's faceplate, causing Lelouch to glare at him. Wait, is he trolling Lelouch? Tamaki questioned. Cocky bastard. A mace formed in Bulkhead's hands. Oh yeah, why don't I wipe that smile right off his face? What about your prime Geass, Optimus? Rai asked. Could that work? Possibly, but in all likelihood, Soundwave's Geass Canceller can likely negate my ability as well. Optimus replied before turning to the captive Decepticon. Soundwave, we have treated you fairly. For the sake of the natives of this planet, tell us what Megatron's end goal is. We know of Ragnarok and that Megatron has his own plans for it. If you tell us of your own accord now, I promise you will not be harmed. If not, we may be forced to rely on less civil methods of interrogation. Why not just skip right to that? I'll go fetch the Gurren. Colin cracked her knuckles. In an act of defiance, Soundwave then emitted a loud siren-like noise and turned the volume up to maximum. This forced everyone to cover their ears and audio receptors as many of them groaned in pain before Soundwave stopped. Scrap this. Ratchet appeared to have had enough. Soundwave is no ordinary Cybertronian, inside or out. So, I would strongly suggest opening him up, so that we can have a first-hand look at the information recorded on his drives. Oh, a chance to look inside the most machine-like Cybertronian. I'd be more than happy to help with that. Lloyd volunteered. Bet we can get all kinds of juicy information from that. Rakshata added. Maybe the mighty Megatron has a chink in his armor. In direct response to that, Soundwave's visor lit up again with Cybertronian code. Uh-oh. RC gulped. What's he doing? Downloading data? Ogi asked. No, Soundwave is erasing data. Ratchet corrected in shock. Why? All eyes set on Suzaku as he stepped forward, walking past Lelouch, who looked towards his friend with concern as he stared up at Soundwave, who stared down at him as more data was being erased. Even in such process, it seemed Soundwave was still aware of his surroundings. Everyone looked with their own expressions of concern, wondering what it was that Suzaku wanted to ask Soundwave. Based on what he said during his time with them, there was little to no interaction between Suzaku and Soundwave at all, no kind of history or connection. So, what was the reason for this? Why are you so loyal to Megatron? The young warrior questioned. Every Decepticon I've met has had his or her own reason for joining. Some were misguided, some joined out of fear, some even joined because he let them do what they want, even if it involved hurting innocent people. And in some cases, all to further their own personal agenda. But not you. As far as I can see, you're always by Megatron's side and you don't appear to have any motive of your own, and I don't see you taking joy in making people suffer. So why? Tell me why, Soundwave. What did Megatron do to make you so loyal to him? Did he threaten you? Did he offer you something? Is it for the sake of revenge? You can't possibly still think it's about the revolution he preached about after he destroyed his home, your home. There was no response from Soundwave, which only seemed to make Suzaku angrier. Answer me, damn it. How can you be so loyal to such a monster? Less than a second after that, Soundwave appeared to stop erasing data. And then he did the one thing nobody expected. He spoke. Soundwave, superior. Autobots and humans, inferior. With just those 6 words, the temperature in the room dropped as everyone stared silently at their captive. Nobody could say a word. It felt like those words had deprived them the ability to so much as speak. Even Bumblebee felt that he lost his voice all over again. Lelouch's own eyes wavered slightly and even felt his heart stop. Soundwave's visor then went black as his head fell back slightly. Is he dead? Tamaki asked, still slightly shaken by what just happened. Ratchet performed a brief scan. His vital signs remain functional. It seems he has simply severed all communications, by crashing his own drives. He put himself into a coma. Ogi asked. It would seem so. Toto confirmed. He'd rather die than reveal secrets to the enemy. He had seen similar practices before with soldiers on his side and that of the enemy. Suzaku meanwhile couldn't take his eyes off the unresponsive Soundwave. Though those words he spoke were likely directed to everyone, he couldn't help but feel that was also a response that Soundwave was also giving him to his question. Yet, Suzaku couldn't quite understand it, and that seemed to make him all the more frustrated. Loyalty. Turning back, Suzaku looked to see Jeremiah approaching him. It's not always something that can be explained. Some people may become enthralled to another for whatever reasons they have, which leads to a sense of loyalty forming. It could be towards family, a lover, friends, a cause, a leader, but what he just said now. Doctor, you said he was no ordinary Cybertronian. Are there others like him? No, as far as I know. Ratchet confirmed. So, he's unique. Jeremiah then looked towards Optimus. Do you know how he and Megatron first met? It was my understanding that they were gladiators in Count and battled each other to a near standstill with Megatron as the victor. Optimus answered. I do not know of Soundwave's past before then. That may be it. Jeremiah continued. This is only a guess, but perhaps Soundwave viewed himself as a superior being even to other Cybertronians. But when Megatron defeated him in physical combat, perhaps Soundwave found the only other being he could view as an equal and decided to work alongside him out of a sense of respect. Perhaps he had no love for Cybertron. I can't say for certain. The only thing I know is that his loyalty is ironclad. Even if his body breaks, his loyalty to his master won't. Jeremiah knew exactly what he was talking about. He even looked up towards Soundwave's body, towards his face, where he saw in the blackened visor, a reflection of himself. Even if his drives are crashed, can we still subject him to a cortical psychic patch? Lelouch asked. It is a possibility. Rakshata answered, somewhat shakily. It would require a lot of work, however. Lloyd added. And he'll have to be moved to the laboratory. Do it, Lelouch ordered. Put him through a patch and find out everything you can, do whatever it takes, and I want him under constant guard. If he knows anything about what Megatron is planning, we need to know it. The fate of the planet may depend on it. Back outside, Laserbeak and Ravage were able to hack directly into Horai Island's communications and gain access to any short-ranged communication devices, including cell phones that were currently connected to the network. They were even able to gain access to live surveillance footage to every place on the island. Searching rapidly through the hundreds of video files, they were able to find footage of the Dark Star Saber being stored in a vault alongside some of the other Yakin relics the Autobot and Black Knights were able to acquire. They even managed to locate the Resonance Blaster, stored in the vault just across from it. Though they were unable to locate CC's current position, acquiring the means to patch into the communications devices the humans had on them would solve that problem. They just needed to narrow down their search. Who among the humans would be the closest to CC? Likely one of her contractors, so it was likely Zero. But he is among the smarter of the humans, he could suspect something if they contacted him directly. But what about his sister? Granted there was little to no information regarding her, but all the data suggests that she was the closest to Zero, which suggests she would be close to CC as well. Perfect. Once they had what they needed, Laserbeak and Ravage disconnected from the antenna and each other. They each communicated to one another on their next step before going off in separate directions. Sword of Akasha. Cybertron's core. Steeljaw questioned. You want to send even more dark energon into the core of our already dead world. Cybertron isn't quite dead, per se. Megatron continued. The spark of Primus is rather dormant, asleep, but very much alive. The dark thought energy that will affect every human on this planet will infuse itself into Primus and by extension, connect to every living Cybertronian, perhaps even those among the dead. In addition, the energy itself will propagate through the spacebridge vortex. Shockwave added, as the destination is on the other side of this galaxy, the energy will spread throughout the Milky Way and beyond, connecting to every sentient being, including those who are not of human or Cybertronian origin. And as I will be the one controlling this energy, Megatron continued, you'll basically control all non-Decepticon life. Steeljaw assumed, but he still could not shake this sinking feeling he had. No, not control, but rather assimilate. Megatron corrected. As I said, the purpose of Ragnarok was to merge humanity's collective consciousness into one single being. Neo-Ragnarok will extend my will to all forms of life in the universe, every single sentient life, human, Cybertronian, or otherwise, they will all become extensions of myself. Charles and his cohorts believed that this process would kill whom they view as God. I shall become God where everything, everyone, is me. Steeljaw's eyes widened in surprise as it all sunk in for him. You intend to turn everyone in the known universe into an extension of yourself. I don't understand, why? Conflict exists because so does free will. Shockwave explained. So long as there is the freedom to choose, others will choose to resist. No matter the outcome of this war, another one will rise. The assimilation of all life will remove the concept of free will from the universe entirely, and all conflict will cease to exist. It is the most logical choice. As Shin heard all of this, a part of him couldn't help but feel entranced by this logic. Humanity has always been a plague on this planet, fighting each other since the beginning and soaking this planet in its own blood for centuries with no sign of stopping. But this could end not only humanity but all of life in the known universe, and turn it into one single form of life. If there is only one form of life, then there is no more war or conflict, no more pain or hurt. True peace. But all Decepticons would lose their individuality as well. Steeljaw spoke in protest. You'd deprive all of us of our freedom. Megatron finished with a sneer. Precisely. Steeljaw growled before his normally calm facade turned into a feral expression. You lied to us. To me. With a roar, he attempted to charge Megatron, but the Decepticon leader fired his fusion cannon at Steeljaw's feet to knock him back. As have you. Megatron told him. Did you not think I would be aware of your own attempt at deception, Steeljaw? Why do you think I've always kept Starscream around despite his multiple attempts at betrayal? So that I would always expect it from others. You would have usurped me to control this planet for yourself. Though I'll give you credit for your patience and charisma, unlike my late lieutenant, but I am simply above your league. The wolf-like Decepticon pushed himself up as he looked towards the Thanatos. Don't just stand there. Attack. No, I don't think I will. Shin replied. What? I agree with Megatron. By annihilating free will entirely, we will finally have a calm serenity and all war will end. Shin replied. Since when does a bloodthirsty maniac like yourself care for peace? Steeljaw exclaimed. The Thanatos cockpit opened so that the cybernetic Shin could reveal his smile. I want to destroy all humanity so that there will be peace. And if this gets us there, then my free will is a small price to pay. Can you say the same? I tell you all this as a courtesy, Steeljaw. Megatron loomed over him. This is going to happen. You can either assist me or die. Your choice. He aimed his fusion cannon, primed and ready. Steeljaw looked like a cornered animal, growling and ready to lash out with absolutely nothing left to lose, even at the cost of his own life. And that might have been exactly what he would do if it weren't for someone speaking to him through his comms. Destroy the ground beneath you if you want to live. Ordinarily, Steeljaw wouldn't trust anyone who had just hacked his comms. But he recognized the voice, and given he stood no chance of stopping Megatron the way he was now, perhaps a tactical retreat was the best option. What do you think? Steeljaw growled, reaching behind for a hidden grenade. I am nobody's lapdog. So be it. Megatron then fired his cannon just as Steeljaw slammed the explosive on the ground below him. This resulted in a small but powerful explosion, one that blasted a hole in the platform as Steeljaw fell. Suddenly, a ground bridge portal opened beneath him, leading to him to fall into the vortex and escape. The portal itself vanished just as the smoke cleared and Megatron didn't seem to notice it. He merely looked into the hole that had been made to see the bottomless abyss of the pocket dimension before looking in amusement. Steeljaw rolled out on the other side of the portal within a hidden room in Darkmount and tried to shake his head and regain his senses. Rough day. He looked up to see the comment had come from Slipstream, who was leaning against the back of the wall while Thundercracker stood in front of him with a ground bridge remote in his hands. Skybite was present as well, looking away from everyone else with a tense expression on his face. I'm assuming that you heard Megatron's whole plan via my hacked comms. Steeljaw guessed as he pushed himself up. Figured he was up to something, I just didn't think it would be anything like this. Thundercracker said. He always knew Megatron was ambitious, but this was beyond insane, even more so than what happened to Cybertron. He's going to eradicate the free will of every sentient being, even us. Skybite shivered. After everything we've done for him, all we've sacrificed. The Megatron that he thought he knew back on Cybertron, the one who spoke of revolution and equality among all Cybertronians, would never even think of doing something so unspeakable, so evil. Why help me? Steeljaw questioned skeptically. Because Megatron's plan will destroy all free will in the universe, and I'd very much like to keep mine. Slipstream said. And the same probably goes for you. So, you suggest an alliance then? Steeljaw guessed. The four of us can't stop Megatron, but there are others who can. We just have to be smart about it. Thundercracker replied. We have a plan, if you're interested. Not like I have a choice. Steeljaw accepted. What do you have in mind? Horai Island, Lelouch's personal quarters. Arthur and Eliza both gave friendly and playful meows as the amnesiac Sarah played with them. Both cats curled up to the girl as she was on her knees and purred as she petted the both of them. Their purrs only caused her to giggle like a child. Nunnally sat down with Sayoko behind her as the young girl couldn't help but smile at how innocent Sarah seemed right now. Though they have yet to help her regain her memories, there was something about her innocence at this moment that made Nunnally feel happy, but also sad. If this is what Sarah was like in the past, then she must have endured quite the trauma to be that cynical CC that Lelouch had met in Shinjuku. Nunnally already had a good idea of what all that might be, but that didn't make it any less sad. But that's also what made it all the more impactful in seeing Sarah become warm and open again, feeling like she was a part of their family. That's when Nunnally made a silent vow to herself. You're a part of my family, Sarah. We'll restore your memories and remove your immortality. I'll make sure you have that happy life that you deserve. Suddenly, Nunnally's phone rang, much to her confusion as she answered. Hello. Nunnally, it's Ratchet. Is CC with you? Yes, she's right here. Nunnally answered with Sayoko looking toward the young girl with concern. I need you to bring her to the laboratory. Now. Of course, but why? Is something wrong? I need you to bring her to the laboratory. Now. Though she was confused by this request, she trusted Ratchet. Maybe they had a way to bring her memories back. Alright, we'll be right there. She hung up. Sarah. She got the girl's attention. We need to take you to lab right now. Okay. Sarah put Eliza down next to Arthur and joined the girl. I'll come with you as well. Sayoko volunteered. Thanks, Sayoko. Nunnally smiled as the three left the room together. At the same time, Ravage had stealthily made his way through the innards of the enemy base and had managed to make his way to the vault. The jungle cat-like Mini-Con had been just as quiet as before and had yet to draw anyone's attention. The data acquired from the hack told Ravage which vault doors he was looking for. He then proceeded to climb up on the wall, his claws digging into the metal before climbing his way to the ceiling and proceeding along it through the hallway. The vault consisted of a single hallway with a series of doors on both walls, each one made to contain a specific relic or weapon. Many of them were empty, but Ravage only sought two. Using his scanners, Ravage scanned all the vaults to make sure that what he was looking for hadn't been moved. And it would seem that was the case. He had found the Dark Star Saber 2 doors ahead on his right, with the Resonance Blaster 3 doors ahead on his left. He also scanned to find the power cables that ran along the ceiling and connected to the whole vault. Using the binary signal only the two of them shared, Ravage was able to inform Laserbeak that he had found his target. Laserbeak, in turn, informed him that he had contacted the human girl using the communications signal and masking Ratchet's voice to draw the immortal out. Now, Ravage will wait to make his move. For this to work, their timing had to be perfect. The still unresponsive Soundwave had been brought into the main laboratory where Ratchet, Perceptor, Fixit, Lloyd, Rakshata, Cecile, Nina, and Sophie all worked to try and find a means to putting their prisoner into a cortical psychic patch. Soundwave was still restrained to the same table as before. The table itself had been moved from the prison cell to the lab, with Bulkhead and Wheeljack standing guard. Rai was also present as he sat in the open cockpit of the Raiden with Tamaki holding a rifle in his hands. Sophie looked over Soundwave's design on the monitor she was at. I've never seen a design like this before. I know Cybertronians are made entirely out of metal, but they seemed biological in their own way. This one, he looks more like a machine. Nina finished as she looked over the data herself. An actual machine, not a person. Soundwave's design is truly unlike any other Cybertronians. Fixit commented. Nobody truly knows how exactly he came to be. Maybe he emerged from the well of all sparks like everyone else, but some say he was built in a laboratory. Well, if he's a robot and not a person robot like these guys, can't you just plug him in somewhere and download all the data? Tamaki questioned. It's not that simple. Cecile replied. Aside from his own design, his internal drives are completely crashed. If we did just download all that data, it would take forever just to restore it all. But he is still a Cybertronian and he does have a mind of his own. Rakshata put in, meaning that a cortical psychic patch is still possible. In theory, but we can't just plug in like normal. Perceptor said as he worked at his own station. There's a lot to consider. Are we really sure he's secure? Rai asked, looking uneasy at the unresponsive Soundwave. What, are you afraid he'll rise back up like Frankenstein's monster or something? Lloyd asked in a joking sort of tone. Considering we've gone up against literal zombies, I wouldn't say, no. Rai replied, I know he's technically in a coma but, it just feels like he's watching us no matter where you are. Can't we throw a tarp over him or something? He's creeping me out too. Bulkhead added. If Mr. Personality does somehow manage to escape, we'll put him down. Wheeljack said. No way he can take all of us on at once. Do not underestimate Soundwave, Ratchet warned. There's a reason why Megatron's always kept him at his side. Now, let us focus more on trying to extract whatever information he has. Because much like our young leader, I have a sinking suspicion that whatever Megatron's end goal is, Soundwave knows what it is. Marianne, still in control of Anya's body, had led her son back to his personal quarters, where the only occupants continued to be the pair of cats before he addressed his mother. You wanted to talk to me about something, mother? Lelouch asked. Yes, Marianne looked around briefly. Where is Nunnally? She probably took Sarah out for a bit. Lelouch assumed. Can you call her here? Marianne asked. I need to tell this to her too. You can simply tell me now, and I'll pass it on to her later. Lelouch offered. Lelouch, please. The spirit of his mother insisted. This is, very important, and I need to say it to the both of you. Please. She looked to him with an expression that seemed to mix pleading as well as fear. One look at those eyes and Lelouch could tell that this was rather important, and it made him somewhat nervous since she wanted to share it with both of her children. If it was serious however, then Nunnally probably needed to hear it as well. Alright. He pulled out his phone to try and call his sister. Nunnally. Or you, he winced a bit when all he got was static on the other line. What? He then tried to call Sayoko, as she would likely be with her. Sayoko. Again, all he got was static. Now he was starting to look concerned, with Marianne being just as concerned as her son. What is going on here? Is there a way we could bypass straight to the cerebral cortex? Perceptor asked Sophie just as Nunnally, Sayoko, and Sarah entered the laboratory while everyone else continued to work. Most of the data we're getting from that scan is coming up as some kind of code. Like his mind is a computer. Sophie answered. Well, if it's a computer, it can be hacked, right? Lloyd assumed. As the scientists continued to work, Rai noticed his half-sister in her company. Nunnally, what are you doing here? Ratchet called. Nunnally happened to glance in one direction and gasped at the sight of the unresponsive Soundwave. Even Sayoko kept her eyes narrowed as she too saw him. So did Sarah, and the second she laid her eyes on the restrained Decepticon, she couldn't help but feel a strong sense of fear. Just something about him sent a chill down her spine. But the girl got back to the matter at hand and looked to the Autobot medic. Ratchet, why did you call Sarah here? What? The medic in question only looked in confusion. I didn't call for her. This only caused Nunnally to look in surprise. We received a call that you needed Chera's help with something. Sayoko stated rather seriously. Nunnally, we've all been busy here trying to crack Soundwave. Nina spoke up. I don't remember Ratchet. Suddenly, Laserbeak entered the laboratory from one of the vents on the ceiling, everyone becoming startled at the sight of the flying mini-con. Oh no. Ratchet's face turned pale. Laserbeak then rained fire down on the group, forcing them to take cover with Bulkhead quickly moving to cover Nunnally's group while Sarah held her head down and Sayoko covered her and Nunnally with her own body. With them temporarily distracted, Laserbeak fired precise shots at Soundwave's restraints to break him free. Come here, ya crazy bird. Tamaki fired his rifle at Laserbeak. I'll make fried chicken out of ya. Wheeljack added to it with shots from his own Energon blaster while Rai quickly brought the Raiden online. However, Laserbeak avoided all the enemy fire and flew down to reconnect to Soundwave. The second the mini-con was connected back to his controller, he came back online and all the information procured by Laserbeak and Ravage was uploaded directly to him. At the same time, Ravage had used his teeth to tear out the power cables on the ceiling that he was still perched to. This shut down a large portion of power to the vault and forced its doors to open. Immediately, Ravage leapt down and ran towards the open vault that contained the resonance blaster. Hey, what's going? The vault's been breached. Ravage stepped out of the vault with the resonance blaster in his mouth and saw a squad of Black Knights arrive on foot with their rifles aimed at the panther-like mini-con. Open fire. The Black Knight at the lead ordered and they fired their rifles at Ravage, who leapt and dodged before rushing straight to the vault that contained the Dark Star Saber. The second his optics laid eyes onto it, the binary signal was relayed back to Laserbeak, and by extension, Soundwave. Ravage then moved directly below the evil sword just as a ground bridge portal opened up, causing them both to fall in. Back in the laboratory, Bulkhead was the first to act as he formed a mace in his hands and moved in to smash Soundwave, only for the silent Decepticon to swipe his arm and push Bulkhead back. Wheeljack had his dual swords drawn and was joined by Raiden as they tried to overwhelm Soundwave, only for him to shoot out his two tentacles and attach to the pair, sending electrical shocks into the Wrecker and the Blue Nightmare, already disabling it. No. Come on, don't do this. Rai tried to keep his Nightmare online, but the Raiden's internal systems were being overloaded by the electric pulse right before it fell over along with the unconscious Wheeljack. Bulkhead was the first to recover as he rushed to tackle Soundwave to the ground while Ratchet and Perceptor flanked around him. Get out of here, now, Ratchet ordered. You heard the bot. Rakshata agreed as she, Lloyd, Cecile, Tamaki, Nunnally, Sarah, Nina, Sophie, Sayoko, and Fixit tried to escape the laboratory, only for a ground bridge portal to open in front of them with the Dark Star Saber falling out, causing the group to back up and even more so when Ravage emerged with a snarl. Ravage, and the Dark Star Saber. Fixit looked in terror. Well, this isn't good. Lloyd commented. Nunnally, the terrified Sarah clung to the girl almost like a lifeline, who tried to reassure her as best as she could, despite being terrified of the current situation herself. Bulkhead's smashes quickly came to a halt when Soundwave latched both of his tentacles at him and sent an electrical surge through his body as well to render him unconscious right before said tentacles hoisted the large Autobot up and threw him into Ratchet and Perceptor, smashing all three Autobots into the wall behind them. Sayoko immediately drew a pair of kunai and tried to rush Ravage, but he leapt around her and towards the nearest wall to scale it. Bad kitty. Tamaki tried to shoot Ravage down, but he was too quick for him. Ravage then quickly ran directly to Soundwave before throwing up the resonance blaster from his mouth, which Soundwave caught just before Ravage leapt up to his back and reattached himself. Soundwave wasted no time in unleashing the resonance blaster's power on Fixit and all the humans in the laboratory. The intense sonic waves caused all of them to scream in pain as they covered their ears in an attempt to shield themselves. However, the noise was too much for all of them as one by one, they all fell to the ground, rendered completely unconscious. Once all threats were neutralized, Soundwave stepped forward, reaching down to claim the Dark Star Saber in one hand, while also grabbing both Sarah and Nunnally in the other. While Nunnally wasn't necessarily a target nor his directive, Megatron had made a note of how close she was to Zero and his leader may find a use for her to strike a decisive blow to the one human who's caused them just as much trouble as Optimus Prime himself. Rai, who managed to force open the cockpit to the Raiden and pushed himself out, only to watch in terror as a ground bridge portal had already been opened, allowing Soundwave to step inside with not only the Dark Star Saber, but Nunnally and Sarah as well. The second the portal vanished, so did Ray's hope, replaced only with dread. And this at the end of Season 2 Part 17 of this What If. Hope you guys like it. Do not forget to leave a comment down below and subscribe to the channel.